What's up, movie nerds? Welcome back to the Movie Nerd James YouTube channel. I am back with another podcast episode, and of course, I am James Eversole, and I am joined by Chad Eversole once again, all the way from Florida.
Hello.
So we're back with another podcast episode. Just like previously before, this is going to be connecting into our top 10 of the decades podcast episodes. I did my top 10 80s films with Chloe Parks and Silas Massoff. That's up on the channel right now. And then I also did our top 10 90s films with my wife, Jessica Eversole, and that is up on the YouTube channel as well. And then now we are going into the decade of the 2000s. And this is actually one of those decades that I kind of feel like they were... I didn't give it enough credit because I think it was like very underrated. I was sitting there, I was just like... After I got done doing my list and all that stuff, I was like, holy crap, there's actually a lot of fantastic films that came out in this decade, so it was awesome to see that. And then so yeah, I'm excited to tackle this decade. But a little bit of bullet points here for everybody listening. We're going to be eligible for the top 10. It had to be movies that released in 2000 to 2009. And then also, I just wanted to say too, it's one of our it's our personal picks, and I said this in the previous top 10 80s and top 10 90s episode, that there's maybe stuff we're going to do like honorable mentions and then top 10s and all that stuff, and there may be stuff in like our honorable mentions that we think is more like quality is better, but this is just our top 10 personal movies to us, and that so just know that it's like, wait a minute, that movie, you think that's better than Bob? No, it's not a power ranking, nothing like that. It's just stuff that's, you know, impacted us or we think is the greatest films. It's just personal to us. So of course everybody's list is going to be different, and that's what you want in our hang, because there's always different corners in the movie universe for everybody. So just that out of the way. And then also I don't know about you, but I didn't really do a power ranking except maybe my number one film of the decade and all that stuff. But so they're kind of just like randomized all over the thing, but it's just 10 films that I loved from the 2000s. And then also finally a spoiler warning. These movies came out 20 plus years ago, so just a heads up, not to just to anybody, that we're going to drop spoilers for these films and stuff like that. So alright, so the layout of the show, what we're going to do is we're going to give our honorable mentions first, just like before, and then we're going to go into our top 10. But what me and Chad are going to do, we're going to rapid fire our honorable mentions off, and then when we get into the top 10, I'm going to give my number 10, he'll give his number 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, and then we're going to tennis back and forth. So it'll be that. And then also something new that we're going to do is some bonus questions at the end. Before this, I gave Chad and myself the questions of who were our top 3 directors of the decade of the 2000s, our top 3 performances by an actor of the 2000s, and then our top 3 performances by an actress of the 2000s. So that's a little bonus question thing that I totally forgot to do in my other top 10s or whatever, but I finally remembered for this one. So with all that out of the way, and like I said, just spoiler warning, and that's laid out of the show, but let's get right into it. So Chad, would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first?
No, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Okay, all right. So this is my honorable mentions. Brace with me here. This is a long list, but I will rapid fire through them. So coming in the honorable mentions for the top 2000s movies and stuff like that. This is my honorable mentions. We got Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, Wreck, which is the Spanish horror film, Memento by Christopher Nolan, Spirited Away, Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho, Old Boy, Casino Royale, Hellboy 1 and 2, The Golden Army by Guillermo del Toro, Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2, The Incredibles, Zodiac, In Bruges, The Dark Knight, District 9, The Wrestler, Gladiator, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, American Psycho, Superbad, Assassination of Jesse James, The Departed, and I'm just going to go ahead and say the whole Harry Potter series. The special shout-outs I want to give to is The Prisoner of Azkaban and The Half-Blood Prince. That's like one of my top 2 favorite Harry Potter films. And then, of course, finally, in my honorable mentions is David Cronenberg's Eastern Promises. So there we go. There's my honorable mentions.
Very good, very good. I should have counted. I didn't see how many you did, but I'm gonna limit mine to the top 25 I have on here. Like I said, they're not tops. They're just the first 25 of my list of 52, so I'm just going to go to 25 and leave it at that. So make it easy. So beginning my list, I'm going to start with Sin City, then Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Big Fish, Tropic Thunder,
Oh, yeah.
Evolution, which is a personal favorite of my wife and my. We watched that movie a lot when it first came out. Then Old Boy, same as you. The Royal Tenenbaums, Grandma's Boy, one of my favorite comedies of all time. Fanboys, A Mighty Wind, which is a very funny parody movie. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yep.
Blades of Glory, The Time Machine, Castaway, Napoleon Dynamite, the Harry Potter series in there, same as yours, and probably the same, the same two out of there. Shout outs for those as well, because they are definitely the peak of the Harry Potter series for us.
Yep.
The Incredibles, Eastern Promises, The Gangs of New York, Superbad, In Bruges, District 9, Equilibrium, Wall-E, and The Prestige.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale movie if you haven't seen it. But that's it. That's my top 25 for honorable mentions.
Yeah, I'm doing the same exact thing I did in the 80s and the 90s podcast. When we give our honorable mentions, and every time I hear a film, I'm like, oh, crap, I forgot that one. Oh, I forgot that one. Like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
It's so easy to do.
Yeah, Equilibrium.
It's so easy to do.
That's such an underrated sci-fi film. It's like, it's so good. But
Well, I would say out of my honorable mentions that I didn't mention, I would probably highlight like 13 Ghosts.
oh yeah.
That was really cool, and it just didn't make it into my other list. But and there's a very cool animated movie that Faith and I saw. It's about war in the Middle East. It's called Persipoli, and we saw that in a theater. And man, it was just super powerful. Just one of those things that I saw it over 20 years ago, and I still think about it. It's just one of those movies where you're like, man, that thing, it just gets to you.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was a foreign language film, so it had subtitles in it. But Persipoli, if you ever haven't seen it, and you get a chance to see it, anybody watching it, you should. It's a super powerful movie, even very pertinent today with what's going on in the Middle East. So a very, very good show.
Yeah, it's like now that you mentioned that too, I was like, I'm gonna look it up right now. I got my little iPad here and everything. Incendie by Denis Villeneuve. That was like my first introduction to him and stuff. And I was that was such a powerful, like haunting film and everything. It was just like, it hit by. I think that came out in the 2000s. I don't know. I have to look that up. But anyways, all right. So let's get into our top 10. Like I said, our layout's going to be a little bit different for our top 10. We're not going to rapid fire our top 10. We're going to do I'll do my number 10. Chad will do his number 10, 9, all that stuff. So, so coming in at number 10 of my top 10 2000s films. At number 10, I have Thomas Alfredson's Let the Right One In. It came out in 2008. The best way I can describe this is it is a Swedish coming-of-age dark horror vampire film. That's pretty simple terms of all I can explain it. And hopefully I don't butcher this. The author, John Alvid Lindquist, he is the author of the book that this is based off of by the same name. And he also wrote the screenplay as well. So, and then the cinematography is done by Hoyt van Hoytema. The reason why I want to say that is because if anybody knows, just recently, the Oscars that just happened, he just won the Oscar for Best Cinematography for Oppenheimer. So, it's just crazy to see, like, one of my favorite horror films of all time. I was looking back on this, I'm like, oh yeah, Hoytema did the cinematography for this and everything. I was like, holy crap. So it's crazy to see how far he's come, because he's one of my favorite cinematographers living today. And then it's funny because the American remake of Let Me In, Greg Fraser, who just won the Oscar for the Dune, and he actually did Dune Part 2 and everything, the cinematography. He did the American remake of Let Me In. He did the cinematography for that. So it's just kind of special that two of the greatest cinematographers living right now both did this property. So it's just a little extra cool. But
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so the thing I love about this movie, it's so chillingly haunting like grounded in reality, because it's you have like long constant shots. There's no like action montages, nothing like that. So I think it's a really ingenious way by Hoitima and them to basically make this feel so grounded and dark and real. And then I love the sprinkles of vampire lore through it. Of course, you have sunlight as well, and then you have the cold. Like, you see her, she's just barefoot, and it's just like so creepy. Or like, why is this Ellie girl walking around the snow barefooted and all that stuff? So then of course you have the hunger for blood, and her we'll call her familiar, like basically goes out and kills people and brings her back blood. And then I know it's so demented, but it is a beautiful shot of the guy hanging upside down and he's pouring the blood out in the snow. It's like I said, it sounds demented, but it's such a beautiful shot in a horrifying way. And then the final thing of like those little sprinkles of vampire lore. I love that they use the cats in this. That was a big thing in the book as well. A lot of people didn't understand why cats, and I think hopefully I get this right as well. Maybe I'm wrong as well. But basically, cats are the ones between of carrying the souls to the dead. So to the afterlife and things like that, all the way back to Egyptian times. And the cats like sense like there's something there without a soul, so the cats start freaking out. So I just think that's genius. Two of the most haunting scenes I think in this is when Ellie ends up biting that random lady, but she actually doesn't finish the job, and the lady gets and turns in a hospital, and the guy opens up the blinds, and then she just catches fire. It's just like one of the most wicked, probably top 5 of my favorite horror shots of all time. It's so wicked. And then of course in the final scene you had the pool scene. I just call it the pool scene, and he's just dunked underwater, and you see a head hit the water. You see like a body skid across the water and all that stuff. So you're underwater the whole time. I just think it's an absolutely genius shot and just horrifying at the same time. So what an ending to the movie. The characters I'm going to give a shout out to is Oscar. I didn't write down the actor's name. That's my bad. Is basically it. Not only is it like a coming of age, but also it deals with like bullying, and basically we see like vengeance like poison this kid's mind. And then also at the same time he sees Ellie and he's counted as a freak, and he's picked on by these bullies and everything else. So of course there's the relation there and the connection that they're freaks, they get picked on, all that stuff. So there's that connective tissue between the two. And then I think the movie does an incredible job dealing with like child innocence and acceptance. Once again, I already got to that a little bit. And then I want to say an extra shout out, and is the MVP of the film is Linda Linderson, who plays Ellie. I think she expertly portrays the role, and I don't think she did like maybe 2 films after this, and that was it. So it was just she did such a good job of coming off, not saying her visual looks, but she was like so creepy, and there's something off, and it's like just chilling and everything. So I thought she did an incredible job in this film. I would recommend to read the book, because the book is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite books of all time. But just a heads up, the book is so much darker than the movie and more effed up. So just a heads up about that. And yeah, like I said, I already got to the terrifying and grounded. That takes it to the haunting of the film to another level. I think it's genius. It's a Swedish film. Definitely check it out, from 2008. They did do an American remake, which I already got to before. I don't think it's nowhere near as good as the original one, but I don't think it's insulting remake, if that makes any sense, because there's a lot of American remakes that happen, and it's just like, God, that was god awful. But I actually think it's a very respectful remake. It's not better than the original by any means, but it was done by Matt Reeves, who did recently the Batman, and it's a great film. So I definitely recommend to check that out if you don't want to read, but I think you should read subtitles, because this movie is phenomenal. So. And also, too, my closing thing is, this I think, is the best vampire film ever made. I think it's phenomenal. It's perfect. It's haunting, and I can't say enough other praise to that. So, sorry, I can talk about this film all day. So, that's what I had at number 10. I had Thomas Alfredson's Let the Right One In from 2008. All right, on to you.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And I can tell right away that there's going to be some pretty interesting contrast between our lists. I know your affinity for horror movies, and I know some of your favorite movies are horror movies. So mine is definitely going to lean more toward the comedic side of things. So I can see that already. But I've got some outliers in there. But that's very, very good. I love it.
All right, so what you got at number 10?
All right, for my number 10, I have a movie from 2000 called Best in Show. It's directed and written by Christopher Guest, who also is one of the actors in it. He plays Harlan Peppers. He is a owner of a bloodhound, and Best in Show is all about a dog show. So it's a mockumentary that this same cast of characters, led by Christopher Guest, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hare, Parker Posey. They have a lot of other films in this same vein. A Mighty Wind. If you're familiar with Spinal Tap, that's a Christopher Guest movie where it's famously a mockumentary where they follow a band around and learn of their crazy antics. But in Best in Show, it follows this group of characters around from beginning of doing local dog shows to get ready for the big the Mayflower Dog Show, which is basically like the one that you watch on Thanksgiving, the AKC, the American Kennel Club Dog Show. But so it's the antics of these folks, and what I love about it is that just like with most people and their pets, they really start to mimic their pets. So Harlan Peppers, played by Christopher Guest, he's this kind of really country, just laid back, just chill dude, and his dog is always with him. The big wrinkly faced bloodhound dog, and it's special to Faith and I. It's just one of those movies that we really loved and connected with. Her being in the animal field for all those years, and it just, she sees something in the people that she worked with at TLC, and how you start to kind of take on your dog or cat or whatever's characteristics, and it just plays out hilariously throughout the movie, culminating in one of the characters' dogs winning, and it's kind of a come from behind underdog story for sure. That is just it's just hilarious. If you have a dog, somebody who does, and recommend this movie to them, Best in Show, and they will love it. It's a good time, and great performances. So one of them in particular, Parker Posey, she just, man, her and her husband, they have a dog. It's a Weimaraner, and so they're very sleek and gray, and so they're very preppy, and it's just it's a fun take on that concept that people start to mimic their animals, and just a really good, fun story for anybody to watch. And also written by Christopher Guest and Eugene Levy as well. I forgot to mention Eugene had written that as well. But folks who don't know Eugene from back then, they'll know him now from Schitt's Creek, and a lot of stuff he's doing now with his son, who was also in Schitt's Creek. And so just fun writing, and I've got them, all the other movies, Mighty Wind, Spinal Tap, For Your Consideration, Waiting for Guffman. Those are all in my honorable mentions, but I just didn't get them all knocked out.
That dude still has.
That's it. My number 10.
Yeah, that dude still has the craziest eyebrows I've ever seen in my life.
He does. I think it says it's on his IMDb. known for giant eyebrows.
It's nuts. But yeah, that's awesome. A great pick. Alrighty. All right, so coming in at number 9, I have the 2006 film by Guillermo del Toro, is Pan's Labyrinth. Anybody that knows me and all that stuff, I'm Guillermo del Toro is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and this was my first introduction to the man. Well, actually, no, I take that back, because I think The Devil's Backbone was my first introduction. Anyways, the biggest introduction is like one of the films that I fell in love with the first time I watched it, and this is probably top 10, one of my favorite films of all time. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a dark fantasy, infused with a war film. I think it's just geniusly done. The script and everything that Del Toro and them did, it was phenomenally pulled off. It's enchanting. It's heartbreaking. Like I said, you're dealing with war and stuff like that. I think Ophelia, who is the main character and the little girl that you follow through the whole thing, played by Ivana Belugia, or Bakuya, I don't know, I'm butchering her name, I'm so sorry. But anyway, she's phenomenal. She's tremendous. I still go back and forth every time I watch this film. Is the entire mystery was this real, or was this a escape for the character? Like, from the moment she pushes the stone of the eye through the statue, does she open a portal to some kind of fantasy realm and it starts leaking through? And or is it in her head to escape the horrors of real life? It's phenomenally done. It's beautifully done. It's heartbreaking. It's just phenomenal. And like, escape the lives of the horrors of life. There we go. Finally got it out. But anyways, and then of course you have the phenomenal and longtime collaborator with Guillermo del Toro through his whole career is the great Doug Jones, who plays the Fauno, and he also plays the Pale Man in this. The exceptional prosthetics, the animatronics, the makeup work, it's god-level good in this film, and still to this day, it's flawless on screen. It's phenomenal what they pulled off. I know that Doug Jones, he actually learned Spanish, but they actually ended up getting a dub over for the voice when they spoke Spanish, but it still infuses together beautifully. And it's smooth, and it's crisp, and it's just phenomenally done. The set pieces by Eugenio Caballero. He won the Oscar for the set pieces as well, and well deserved, because they're jaw dropping, being transformed into the real world, to these fantasy realms. And we already know that Guillermo del Toro has been lifelong through his entire filmography is known for his phenomenal set pieces and his attention to detail. And this is just it's on full display in Pan's Labyrinth, and masterfully done. One of the scenes that just freaks me out, and I think you said Faith, this also freaks her out too, was the Pale Man scene.
Yeah,
it's such a terrifying scene, but also once again the sets and where the food is, and the long table, the food, and it's just beautifully. The lighting, set pieces, the details, everything. It's just phenomenal. And Guillermo del Toro uses like the toad, so you get a little bit of like going into the tree, like Alice in Wonderland. You have fairies. Of course, you have the fawn, which I guess you could. Was it Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? You can relate that back to. There's a lot of fantasy elements, but fantasy elements. I would say this is more like a fantasy film for adults. That we've never seen before, and the dark nature of it was just, and the little aspects that he tackles in this, it was one of a kind. It's never been done so beautifully, I don't think. And then this did end up winning 3 Oscars for cinematography, and then makeup, and then set pieces as well, like I got 2 before. This was around the time too of the Academy that they weren't giving. They would do Best Foreign Film, but they wouldn't put foreign film in Best Picture, which I think is absolute heartbreaking, because I think this could have been a contender for Best Picture of the Year as well. It was just phenomenal. Like I said, I coming at 9, I had Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. This had such an effect on me when I first watched it, and then every time I watch it, it's one of those films that I have a lot of films I do this with, and it has that rarity of where I fall in love with it even more every single time I watch it. And I think my viewings of this film is entered double digits, so it's just absolutely phenomenal. But I think it's a masterpiece by Guillermo del Toro. I think it's a true cinematic marvel, and one of the greatest fantasy films ever made. So yeah, that's what I had at number 9, was Guillermo del Toro's 2006 film Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I have it on my my honorable mentions. It's just down to the bottom of the list, so I didn't get to it. But it's I love that movie. The effects and cinematography for that are just unreal, and it is nice that they decided to finally open up, best movie to the foreign language movies, and it's just like with anything, if you're gonna have these categories and stuff, and you're gonna allow foreign movies in, how can you not add them as possible, best picture? I mean, it's all, we're all one community, right? One earth, one community of filmmakers, and that's the way it should be. But
And then
that's good pick.
Yeah, another one too. I forgot to say, and that was too the sound design too. I think is very underrated because especially when the fawn comes out of the wall, and it's all crackling and all that stuff. It's wicked. Same thing with the Pale Man when he comes to life, the fingers twitching and the crackling, the snapping, and then the flutter of the little fairy wings and things like that. It's phenomenal work, and yeah, it's fun. Anyways, yeah.
Oh yeah, all around, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That was one I was definitely glad to see in the theater when it came out, just because you can't you can't replicate that, especially the sound.
Yeah.
Sound design is so hard to get, even with the advancements in surround sound for your home. It's just there's nothing like it. But yeah, that's great. Very, very good pick.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Like I said earlier, this is where we're gonna see our division of tastes. I think as far as our line of our movies here, because my number 9 is going to be 2003's Elf.
Oh yeah,
by Jon Favreau, directed by Jon Favreau, written by David Berenbaum. I'm sure we've all seen Elf. I actually watched it just a couple days ago. It just became available on Max to watch for the holidays, and just your typical movie about a kid who was in an orphanage when Santa was delivering presents, and he jumped in his sack and ended up at the North Pole, and was raised by elves, by Bob Newhart as his father. And then once he learns that he is not in fact an elf, even though he's obviously like 6'3" and very hairy, he decides to try to go find his father, and makes his way to New York City. And so comedy ensues from there. But it is just a classic, just loved holiday movie. Once again, it's just one that we've watched for a long time. Came out in 2003, so it's one of the first movies that my daughter watched as a kid. Once she kind of knew what stuff was and could watch something and form an opinion, she loved Elf. And Jon Favreau, he appears in it as well, but it's Will Ferrell and Zooey Deschanel, and a great cast of folks, and not much in the way of effects or any great set design, cinematography, stuff like that. But it's just one of those movies that it's just fun to watch, and so it made my top 10 for the 2000s just from sheer nostalgia.
Well, they do some old school tactics in there too. It was like they talked about where they had Will Ferrell. He sat more closer to the camera, and they had the uncanny valley effect of having the kids in the background, and it makes them look smaller and all that stuff. So they were the elves. So that was really cool.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's some great effects similar to what they did in Lord of the Rings, where they made Gandalf look bigger by having him closer to the camera and adjusting focus and stuff on the camera. But look at YouTube for some behind the scenes videos of that, and you definitely see some cool stuff. If you're a filmmaker or a student of film, you'll see some really neat things there. A lot of all in camera effects for making him look bigger or even bigger than the rest of the cast, all through foreshortening and camera focus. So good point. Definitely. So there's some good effect stuff in there, but it's in a different way.
Yeah. Well, what was that? I think it's on Netflix. What is the movies that made us or something like that?
Yeah, movies that made us.
They have an episode on there of Elf, and it's crazy because the production of that, they were talking about that Will Ferrell thought this was going to ruin his career, and it's a crazy story, and how much of limited time they had, and then Jon Favreau bringing him on as director. It's a crazy story, and then it ended up becoming a phenomenal Christmas classic for the time. So it's incredible.
Well, it's a good example too of a lot of guerrilla filmmaking stuff, because there's a lot of scenes that you'll see with Will walking through the streets of New York where they just followed him around with the camera.
Yep.
And just jumped out of a van and just said, "Hey, do this here on the crosswalk," and he did it. And then they, okay, cut, jump back in the van, get out of here, because they didn't have permits to do that stuff. They were just driving around. The gentleman that they see that's in all red, the tracksuit,
yeah,
and he comes up to him and says, "Santa." He wasn't. I mean, he wasn't anybody. He wasn't even credited in the movie. He was just somebody they saw on the street. So, a good example of Jon Favreau's just guerrilla movie making, and getting the job done, and just to say it's like you said, it's a classic for a reason. Yeah. You can't go wrong with Elf.
Man, yeah, it's such a good. I still crack up too when he's starts screaming Santa, like, because we even do that for the holidays too. It's like anybody's like, Santa's coming to town. I'm like, Santa, like we all hyped up in our hands. Like, it's so funny. But yeah,
that's right.
that's a great pick. That's good stuff. But all right, is that all you got?
That's it for Elf. Go see it if you haven't.
All right, so coming in at my number 8, I have the 2004 film, and Chad will know this very well because we talk about this film all the time. Actually, we talk about this trilogy all the time. Is Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. Before I give my explanation, I'm there's no way near I'm going to be able to give the explanation better than Clark Collis, who did a book about it's a phenomenal book. I love it.
Red on You?
Yeah, you've got Red on You by Clark Collis. I absolutely recommend that. It's about the making of Shaun of the Dead. Phenomenal book. A lot of details I didn't even know years later, and it's a great book, and I absolutely adore that book so much. This Shaun of the Dead was the birth of what we like to call the Cornetto trilogy, which would ended up being Shaun of the Dead, the Hot Fuzz, and then you had the World's End and all that stuff. So this was the birth of the Cornetto trilogy, and then also our first introduction to I think one of the greatest combos ever put in cinema. That's my personal opinion. Is Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. I think the combination of those two is just absolutely phenomenal. They've worked together on Space, the TV show, and then they also did, of course, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, The World's End, and then they did another one I really liked them both in is Paul, about the little alien voiced by Seth Rogen. They're absolutely, I think, laugh out loud funny together. They're British humor mixed in with that too. I think their chemistry is just absolutely flawless together, but I love those two so much. And then the script was written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. They had the idea from one of the episodes on Spaced, where they actually did the Resident Evil 2 video game. So they were big fans of Resident Evil, and I guess after the episode, after they got done shooting it and all that stuff, they were just so hyped up and all that stuff. They're like, we should do a zombie film. So they wanted to do a zombie film. And then if you read it more into You've Got Red on You, they talk about like the production of getting it made, and then also talking about around the same time, Danny Boyle came out with 28 Days Later. So Edgar Wright was like, oh no, because it's been so long, like a good zombie film. And they thought they were going to be the resurgence, like the big resurgence of it. But it's so good because it starts out in humanity itself, like going to work in, the everyday life. They're already zombies. So it's just like they're zombies to society. So it's so well done and it's genius. And then I love and I still just adore this shot is at the very opening. You have a one consistent shot of Simon Pegg where you follow him from his flat all the way out to the store. He grabs a pop and he comes out, but there's little drops of like certain shots that when you come back later in the film, he does the same exact thing. But this shot, there's like a dead body over here. There's smashed up windows. The poor guy that he ends up giving change to every morning, is actually a zombie. And he's like, hey, how you doing, mate? And he just like I said, society was zombies before then. And it's just everyday life. And he never looks up. It's freaking hilarious. I love it so much. And one of my favorite shots, I actually had the liberty of seeing the Shaun of the Dead on the anniversary screening on the big screen. So that was phenomenal to see. And still my favorite shot in the film is when Simon Pegg pushes that chick and she falls back and she hits the pole. And then she gets up and they realize, like, okay, this isn't normal. Something's happening. And she gets up and you can see the shot of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost just standing there with a shocked look on their face through this gigantic hole through her body. It's beautifully done. I just absolutely love it. And I will say, too, when we went and seen it in theaters, and once again, I think you can't you can never take away the movie theater experience, because I never notice as much as home. There is jump scares, but man, when you're watching on the big screen, there's so many funny, genius jump scares that actually still got me to this day. So it's just so funny. Yeah, it's a comedy or whatever at the same time, but Edgar Wright does this hilarious thing of just making you jump, and you're like, oh my god, all that stuff. So it's so good. And then I love the famous line of going back to the, oh crap, I'm drawing a blank. What's the name of the bar?
Winchester.
The Winchester, yeah. So I go back to the Winchester and wait for this all to blow over, and just that whole montage of where they're just like killing Bill Nye over and over. It just it's so good. And then one of the other things that makes me laugh out loud all the time is Bill Nye when he turns off the radio, even though he's a zombie. Because he kept telling, he's like, "Would you turn down that music?" and all that thing. He's sitting there bleeding out of the neck and stuff like that. And he's like, "That's not your husband anymore." And he turns off the radio, just like,
yeah, maybe it is.
And but that, yeah, it was Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. They do an awesome job. It's not just you take away the zombies and all that stuff. It's still at the end of the day, it's a film, a love story, but also balancing of your maturity, like coming into your maturity. And that's what Simon Pegg character Sean deals with in the film, between him and his girlfriend. Also, basically, you need to grow up. It's one of those things. And you see with Nick Frost's character, he's just sitting around playing video games. It's like there's a lot of layers to the film, and it's not just a zombie film. It's a very layered zombie film, and the comedy's genius. It's sharply written. I love it. One of the final things too. And even when I went and seen it in the theater, man, I was like, man, I forgot how just emotionally real and heartbreaking it gets when Sean's mother dies. It's just like the movie comes to like a screeching, like heartbreaking halt. It's just like, oh my god, in the best way possible, not in a bad way. I mean, like the best way possible. Oh my god, I'm like, I still get emotional when that scene comes around. I'm like, oh man, this just got like super real. But yeah, like I said, if you love like action, high pace editing, it's absolutely brilliant. I think this is one of those films, I didn't know that films could be made like this. I call it the Sam Raimi effect, because I got the same thing from when I watched Evil Dead 2 for the first time, and it inspired me so much. I'm like, holy crap, you can make movies like this, and it's genius. I love this film so much. But like I said, definitely check out Clark Collis. You've Got Red on You. It's a phenomenal book and explains the making of Shaun of the Dead way better than I could. So it's a phenomenal film, but definitely check it out. But yeah, that's what I had at number 8. I had the 2004 film Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely one of my favorites, and it'll appear later on my list as well, for the top tens. I know you and I, we have our Cornetto trilogy connection, that we feel very strongly about those movies, and Edgar Wright, the way he directs and the way he frames things, and it's just he just has that style that like you just said, where it's like, man, I didn't know movies could be like that. It just felt more movies of the say the 80s, 90s, getting into 2000 just felt super formulaic, and it's just, you have this rising action and, falling, and you get your conclusion, so they went to film school and they said, this is how you do it. Here's how you make a movie. And then you get folks like Sam Raimi and Edgar and Guillermo del Toro and, other folks we'll see on our list for different movies. But it's just so nice that, yeah, there's jump scares, and it is a horror when it's all said and done, but it's, man, it is very emotional at times. Some of those deaths are just, they get you, even though it's a zombie movie, it's going to happen. It's like watching The Walking Dead, any characters you like, they're going to die, and, spoiler, when Nick, when he finally dies and they decide to just chain him up and let him still play video games with Sean, like, forever, or at least until Sean dies, or I don't know how long a zombie lasts, but it's just that last little bit of humor at the end where we're in the end, like you said, we're all zombies in a way, and his fabulous Edgar Wright's fabulous wonders, his long shots, comparing the two different before and after the apocalypse thing is just so good. A good fun movie to watch, and there's some jump scares in there, but don't worry too much about them.
Yeah.
The blood is funny enough that it doesn't, it isn't going to keep you up at night, so you'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, I talk about like the anytime like you're trying to like explain a tone or something, I use like in a different director, like a Stanley Kubrick tone or blah 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 tone or Quentin Tarantino tone, the tone of Quentin Tarantino, blah blah blah, and then after I watched this film, it completely changed for me. I call it the Edgar Wright tone. It's just the comedy was one of a kind. The way the actors they were in it's just I call it the Edgar Wright tone. It's just like basically he separated himself because it's so special. Yeah, it just weight of it.
Yeah, it's good. And so when we get to it on my list, I probably don't really have much to say about it.
Okay.
but whatever you just said, so that's why I figured I'd just piggyback on the end of yours for that, and then when we get to it, we can skip right over to the next one. But
all right.
But that's great. Yeah, I love it. So my number 8 movie, so it's just going to continue my love for more comedic roles, but it is the 2006 Mike Judge directed Idiocracy.
Oh, nice.
And I just watched that a couple days ago, probably because I saw it pop up, and you and I have been working on these lists for a while, and I saw it. I just wanted to watch it, and it is a far-fetched comedy by Mike Judge, who is also creator of Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill. Earlier in '99, he did the very famous Office Space, and he's done other things. He directed a bunch of Silicon Valley episodes,
yep.
And so he's got his comedy chops. Mike Judge and Ethan Coen, they actually wrote this movie, but it's a guy who played by Luke Wilson from many other movies, but Luke Wilson, he was in the military. He got kind of drafted into a role in this experimental program where the issue they're running into right now in the U.S. is that there's no wars going on. So the problem is they got all these really good soldiers that have been in the military for a while, and they're very skilled and they're great at what they do, but they've got no wars to fight. So it's kind of a waste. So the idea is that they would freeze these dudes, and then whenever a war popped up later, they can unfreeze them. They have the best of the best ready to go at any time. So Luke, and then unfortunately they could not find a female military person that was that basically was as lazy as Luke Wilson's character was. So they didn't want to waste one. So they ended up going as they say, quote, in the private sector, and ended up finding a prostitute played by Maya Rudolph from SNL fame, very wonderful actress from Bridesmaids and a bunch of other stuff. But Maya, I love Maya. She's fantastic. So they get this prostitute who's constantly worried about her pimp finding out that she is working with the government. And so what happens is they get frozen, and while they're frozen, the program that they agreed to shuts down, and everyone forgets about them. So what happens is, as the facility, the military facility is destroyed, their pods that they're in, like little coffins, they just keep on trucking, and they keep them frozen, and 500 years later, they get unfrozen by mistake when one of the great trash avalanches of the 2500s happens, and Luke's coffin gets blasted into the apartment of a lawyer, a loosely turned lawyer played by Dax Shepard, which I can't stand that guy, but he does all right in this movie. But so what happens is they wake up 500 years later and finds out that the world is very, very dumb. Everybody in it is a complete moron. The guy that's the president is played by Terry Crews, and the reason he's the president is because he's the biggest and the strongest. So he just, they said, hey, let's make this guy the president. So what happens is they find out that Luke, being from 2000, is smart compared to everybody else. They give him a test when they arrest him, and ends up having the highest score ever recorded for for the facility. So they end up hooking him up with the president, trying to solve some of their problems, and it is ridiculous in every way, but it is such a good time, a good fun movie to watch. And with the state of what's going on in the world today, it there's a lot to be said for for some of the symbolism in it, and some of the not so subtle symbolism in it, where they're just basically saying that as the world continues to get dumber, it's the people that are born decades later are going to continue to get even dumber. Yep. So we just gotta keep an eye on that and try to keep some of the smarter folks around best we can. But very, very, very funny movie. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to watch, cinema verite. It's probably a top 10 on anyone else's list but mine. But I love it. It's a fun movie, and I recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's available now on Hulu. If you have a Disney Plus Hulu package, if you have that. Idiocracy, 2006. Watch it if you can.
Yeah, it's funny. Still, one of the scenes that cracked me up is when they're doing the thermometer checks, and he's like, "This one goes in your mouth, this one goes in your butt." He's like, "Oh, wait a minute, I think that's the one that goes in your mouth." I'm like, "Oh my god!" I just like that scene still cracks me up every time.
It's so good. Yeah, that is definitely a winner for sure. I love that scene, and because then afterward, because he finds out that all the drinking fountains have Brawndo in them instead of water, he goes over back to this drinking fountain he was just at, and he's rinsing and spitting like nobody's business after the probe incident. So so good, and I recommend to anybody. I know my wife, Faith, she hates it like with a passion. So whenever I watch it, it's when no one else is around. It's my private fun time to watch a stupid movie.
Yeah, and like I said, I try to keep the channel like the politics away from the movie channel or whatever. But like you said, it's kind of scary. It's scary. Yeah, it's a comedy at the end of the day, but there's some elements in there is how scary real it is to the today of life. So it just the real life, I should say that it just like it's kind of scary. It's nuts.
That's right.
But all right, is that all you got?
That is it for that one.
Alrighty. Alright, so coming in at my number 7, I have the 2009 film Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds. So, Inglourious Basterds, I still think it's in my top 10. I think of the best and most flawless scripts ever written. I think this is the dialogue is so rich. I think it's so smooth. The pacing, all that stuff. It's one of the best screenplays I've ever seen put on screen. It's absolutely flawless. Of course, you have the opening scene. You're introduced to one of like the most terrifying villains in cinema history. I think is Christoph Waltz, and talk about where did this guy come from? Because I know there was a big thing behind the scenes of, for years, Quentin Tarantino wanted to get this made, and I think like all the way back to like Fight Club, he was trying to get Brad Pitt on board because that's what he wanted in the role. I forget the name of his freaking character's name. But anyways, Brad Pitt, he wanted him to play this character, and they wanted to do this movie all the way back to like Fight Club and stuff like that. So, and then years later, he finally made it. But there was the problem that they didn't know who they were going to get to play Colonel Hans Landa, and he couldn't find anybody that spoke the languages. He couldn't find anybody that had what he wanted from the character, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, this Christoph Waltz dude comes out of nowhere. And he gets the thing. And I talk about one of the greatest opening scenes, most terrifying opening scenes I've ever seen, is this guy shows up, Christoph Waltz, who's Colonel Hans Landa, and basically he's a Nazi looking for, hiding Jews in France. And, he sits down and just right off the bat, once again, not only I think Quentin Tarantino is one of my personal favorite directors of all time, but not only one of the greatest directors of all time, I think he's one of the greatest writers of all time. I think his scripts and everything else and his writing is phenomenal. And the dialogue right off the bat, and then also how it's edited and also directed, the tension of the scene of getting across how much of a monster really this Hans Landa is, because he calls himself the Jew Hunter. He has the nickname of the Jew Hunter because he thinks he can think like a Jew. And then also he has, along the lines, he compares Jews like to rats, like they're vermin and all that stuff. I'm like, good Lord, what a monster. It just like the dialogue right off the bat to make you automatically see this guy as a complete monster. Saying it's just terrifying. And then of course, we'll go to English, and he goes to English, and he's like, where are they hiding? And the guy does the little, I know this is an audio podcast, but he gives the visual with his finger, and he points down, and then he was like, all right, he's like, we're going to go back to German, or back to French, and we're going to, pretend like everything's okay, and then all of a sudden these Nazi guys come in there, and they start shooting up the floor, and like I said, it's insane. Like one of the best opening films I've ever seen in a film. And then, of course, you have the great Brad Pitt as the leader of the Bastards. And then I love the cameo of longtime friend, and he actually has a big role in this, is Eli Roth, who plays the Bear Jew. He's so he's so good in this. And then Brad Pitt, I think this is like one of my top 3 favorite Brad Pitt performances. He's so good in this, and oblige him. His accent and the way he talks, he's insane. And then the hilarious scene where he's Gorlami, and he's trying to sit there and he's like being Italian and all that stuff. It's one of the greatest things ever. And then the cinematography by Robert Richardson. I think this is the most beautiful of Quentin Tarantino's filmography. I think this is his most beautiful film. But if you ask me tomorrow, I go back and forth between 3 different films. I think Kill Bill is visually his best film, and then I go to Django Unchained, I think is visually his best film, and then you got Inglourious Basterds, I think is his visually best film. I just go back and forth from all those 3, and it's such a beautiful film. And then of course another scene. Not only does a movie have one of the greatest opening scenes, but one of the greatest scenes I think of all time. Once again, throwing all the praise at it, is the editing, the tension, the acting, blah blah blah, is the basement bar scene, and the rich dialogue. And I rewatched my top 10 movies before we did this, and still to this day, we're in the cell phone era and all that stuff. I can't even look at my phone like during these scenes. I'm like just glued to the screen, like they're so good. And when Michael Fassbender gives up the 3 fingers, and he doesn't give it up in the German way, which is like this, and it just gives away the position. It's just insane. And then once again, in Quentin Tarantino fashion, you're just like, oh. Stiglitz is down there. You got Michael Fassbender. I'm like, oh, they won't die. And then boom, 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 and like everybody does, like everybody dies. It's just like, it's crazy. But yeah, the basement and the opening scene is just, it's one of the greatest scenes constructed in cinema history. It's so good. I love that Quentin Tarantino, I call it Disney-fied, the ending or whatever. Obviously this didn't happen, but they end up killing Adolf Hitler, and they blow up the cinema and all that stuff. It's so good, and I love the ending, and I love that he changed something about it and all that stuff. The same thing he did with like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I call it, he Disney-fied it, gave it that more happy ending, stuff like that. Even though people died, there was the more happy ending and stuff like that. I think this is Quentin Tarantino, once again, just like the cinematography and visually. I go back and forth from Pulp Fiction and Inglourious Basterds. So you're talking to me today, I'm saying this is Quentin Tarantino's best film, even though his filmography is outstanding. I think it's his masterpiece. I think the best of his filmography. I think it's one of the best, and then of course one of the best films of the 2000s, not just of the 2000s, but one of the best films ever made. And then I even think Quentin Tarantino knew this was his masterpiece, because I think it's a kind of a wink at the camera from Quentin Tarantino, that when Brad Pitt's carving the swastika into Christoph Waltz's head, and he was like, you know what, this just might be my masterpiece, and that's the end of the film. And it's so true, because I think he even knew. He's like, yeah, this might be my masterpiece. All right, so yeah, coming in at number 7, I had the phenomenal 2009 Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah, that's very good. I've got it on my honorable mentions. It just didn't hit the top 25, I guess, on there. But Yeah. I mean, what what else is there to say about it? It is definitely one of the best movies I've ever made, without a doubt. I mean, and it should, technically speaking, should it be on my top 10? Like, of course it should, but it's not, just because of I'm a little crazy, so it is what it is. But it's not because it is not one of the best movies ever made. Yeah, I mean, that just everything about it, the cast, just phenomenal. But very, very nice.
All right, what you got at number 7?
My number 7, I am doing an animated movie, and it is Howl's Moving Castle.
Ooh,
2004, nice. Hayao Miyazaki masterpiece, and it's a lot of, anytime you watch animated, especially foreign language movies, and then they're remade in English, I can't really stand them. I'll watch the subtitle version, because typically the Japanese cast is so much better. If you're watching, if you watch a lot of anime, you'll see that. I just can't usually stand the voice cast for anything that's made into English. But in this case, Hayao and this team, they pick just phenomenal actors and actresses to do their voice work. And in this case, I can watch the English version of it. Hal, the main character, is played by Christian Bale, and he is just fantastic in this. And then Emily Mortimer, she plays young Sophie, the female character in this, who ages up and ages down quite a bit. If you've seen Hal, you understand that. But it's got Blythe Danner and Lauren Bacall, one of her last roles. Very famous silver screen actress, been around a long time. I think she was in her 80s when she did Witch of the Waste for Howl's Moving Castle. Just a phenomenal, visually, stunning. If we were to do a list of cinematography, for me, Howl's Moving Castle is in their top 3 of the 2000s for just how beautiful it is. And it's definitely one I can't summarize anything that happens in this thing, because it's insane. But it is just phenomenally voice cast, just visually stunning. It's got I forgot, Billy Crystal is in it. He plays Calcifer, just a little flame that is kind of I want to say it's the conscience of the movie. Billy, he's kind of giving exposition, letting everyone know kind of what's going on, and it's a fantasy realm movie where, in Hayao Miyazaki, he always has a tendency to structure his movies around of war, or at least the thought of war or going to war. And in this case, Hal, being a magical person, he is kind of volunteered into the ongoing battle that they have with humans against kind of non-humans, and so you get to see a lot of shots of war, bombings. Be reminiscent of probably what Japan went through during their war. So it's always, I think, if you do any research for anime or any Japanese movies, stuff like that, I mean, it's funny that they're always thinking about that, even though it was a long time ago now. It's still something that even culturally they're always aware of, and they don't ever want to get to the point where the rest of the countries of the world want to drop bombs on them again. So they're just always aware of it, and not in a way that modern folks would be like, "Oh, I'm going to get them for what they did to us." It's just the opposite. They said, we committed atrocities against our own people and the other peoples of the world, and we're never going to get there again. And so it's something that comes up thematically in a lot of Japanese made movies. But anyways, political stuff aside, but if you're watching any of his movies, you're going to get that a lot. So just keep that in mind. You think like Grave of the Fireflies and
Yeah.
Slew of other movies. It's just it's in the back of their minds a lot. But so I've got Howl's Moving Castle in there as my next movie, and I mean, what more can you say about it? I mean, it's just, if you haven't seen it, you are missing out. And like I said, in this case, if you're not a big fan of subtitles, you don't have to on this one. You can go in, listen to the English version of it. The voice work is top notch. You know, absolutely the best out there. Great casting for it, and so just go into it knowing that you're going to see something special.
Yeah. There was what was the guy that created it? I always butcher his name. Go ahead.
Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah, he's another one too. It's just like going back to Quentin Tarantino as well. It's just like when I did my ranking of all the Quentin Tarantino films, I had Jackie Brown last, and everybody was like, "What are you talking about? It's a great movie." No, it is a great movie. It is a great movie. It's just like, but the guy's made so much great stuff that it's hard to rank these things. Same thing with once again, say his name so I don't butcher it.
Hayao Miyazaki.
Yep, it's just like when I'm ranking his films, it's just like it's so hard to do because there's so many masterpieces in there. It's just like his filmography is ridiculously good, and like Howl's Moving Castle, My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away. It's like
Princess Mononoke.
Yep, it's just like how can you pick?
Ponyo, Castle in the Sky.
Yeah, it's like how
just keeps going and going.
Yeah, it's like he's another one. It's just like masterful stuff. Yeah, that's a great pick. But all right, so is that what you got?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right. So coming in my number 6 will not be a shock to anyone that knows me, and especially recently, is at number 6. I have the 2002 film Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. So 28 Days Later follows a rage virus. Basically, these scientists are trying to find the cure to rage, like road rage and things like that. So they're trying to find this cure to it, but it backfires on them when animal activists come and set these apes free. And of course, apes are and chimpanzees are the closest relative to humans, so they're testing on them. But the guy warns them before they take them out that they're highly contagious and they're infected. And they're like, infected with what? And he's like, they're infected with the rage. And so Danny Boyle and Alex Garland give birth to one of the greatest, new horrors of the. They're not zombies. They're technically called the infected, but they've been, even Danny Boyle's like, it's not a zombie film. It's an infected outbreak and blah, blah, blah. So, but it's one of the greatest installments into the horror genre of all time. Obviously, recently too, it's like to the point that this inspired me so much. I wrote a script back in high school called 28 Hours Later, which is still a short film to this day that I'm still trying to get made. Right now, the trailer for the short film is out there, and I'm hoping to one day get it made. But yeah, 28 Hours Later is a passion project because this movie, like I said, it just had such a long-lasting effect still to this day, and such a genius horror movie. Cillian Murphy. This was my first introduction to Cillian Murphy, and then a genius concept and this is before The Walking Dead, even though people say they come back and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this sounds like the beginning of Walking Dead. It's like, nope, 28 Days Later did it first. Was you have this genius concept of a fish out of water of, what was it? Crap, I'm forgetting Cillian Murphy's guy's name. But anyways, he ends up getting clipped by a bite messenger and ends up going into a coma. And then when he ends up waking up, this 28 days later, this outbreak has happened. So we're with Cillian Murphy's character at the beginning, and we're just like the viewer, and I just think it's so geniusly done. So when he walks into this nightmare, you have the infected, the first encounter. I call it the hello scene or whatever, the church scene or whatever you want to call it. And he comes in, he sees all these bodies laying everywhere, and he says it's still so. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it, but it's so horrifying. He's like hello, and then boom, these like two infected just look up at him and everything else, and it's just so horrifying and creepy. And to Alex Garland and Danny Boyle, the genius design of the infected, it's absolutely horrifying. You have like blood, even the small as a blood drop can get you infected. They're spitting out blood, and you have 10 to 20 seconds before you fully turn. So this isn't like you get bit by a zombie and you slowly transition into a zombie or something like that. No, the infected, you have 10 to 20 seconds and then you're the infected. You start bleeding out the eyes, the ears, coughing up blood. It's just absolutely terrifying. And then it was described as you basically, and I told when we did 28 hours later, that's what I told my actors too, that you take road rage and you times it by 100. So just take rage, times it by 100. That's how you need to act. And the thing is that horrified me was this was the first time that I've ever seen, like, if you want to call it zombies or anything like that they run, and they're not slow or anything. And I was like, did that infected just no, there's no way. And then, like, holy God, they run. So it's just like, it's so terrifying. So like I said, the genius design of the infected is just absolutely phenomenal. And then there's no cure either. You have to wait for them to starve, and it's crazy, and it's just like, it's so terrifying. But once again, Cillian Murphy, which is Irish royalty to this day, but of course at the time too, you had the great Brendan Gleeson is in this. His character is such a teddy bear, and still to this day, maybe top 5, possibly top 3. I think it's one of the most heartbreaking death scenes of all time. He's such a teddy bear and such a nice guy inside this world that's falling apart in a nightmare, and this guy is like a light in the darkness. Like, he's such a teddy bear, and his death scene is so heartbreaking. Even, like I said, getting to the terms of why he's such a teddy bear is he gets loud. They get into like a confrontation before he gets infected, but the drop falls from the infected and goes into his eyeball, and then he gets infected. But even when he's slowly transforming, he's telling his daughter, he's like, I'm sorry for shouting a while ago. Even in the face of death, he's still apologizing. He's such a sweet, gentle guy, and to see this destiny, it's so heartbreaking. But to Danny Boyle, they do something in this film I thought was absolutely genius. They shot this on a Canon XL1. The resolution on those things are like 750 by like 500, I think. And then given the low resolution, and then they like take the high contrast, and then they sharpen it up, and I just thought it was genius. I know a lot of people think it gets a lot of hate today because visually how it looks on a big screen, but to make this so grounded and feel so real, I love how it's shot. It's like if you go back to old Doctor Who episodes, I just love that stuff because they're just shot so cheaply, and I just think that's just extra special, and I just like, it bleeds so much heart, and I love it. And that's what, it's funny because 28 years later, I found out is the sequel that's coming out next year to this franchise, and Danny Boyle's back and all that stuff. But they shot it on an Apple phone, which warms my heart because when we shot the 28 Hours Later trailer, I shot it all on my phone. So I wanted to get that more grounded, low resolution stuff like that. Even though today cell phones can capture video insanely good compared to a Canon XL from 2000. So it's just it's insane. But like I said, I think it's geniusly shot. How they use the Canon XL, I thought that was a genius move, and warmed my heart to hear that 28 Hours Later is being shot on the phone. Cillian Murphy. Actually, let me get to Naomi Harris first. When we meet Cillian Murphy still has his humanity, and when we meet Naomi Harris, she's completely 28 days deep into this, infected outbreak and stuff like that, and she's lost her humanity. And what I mean by that is to the point, she's in survival mode. She even says in the film, being alive as good as it gets. That's what she says in there. And she's just in straight survival mode to the point that the guy that she's walking around with, Mark, he ends up getting like scratched or bit or something like that in a confrontation when they infected, and she wastes no second and just hacks him up with a machete. A guy that she's been with for weeks, and then she just hacked that dude up within seconds. She's like, I don't care if it's your sister, if it's your husband, your long life friend. It's like, you've got 10 to 20 seconds to kill them or they're going to kill you. And she's just in straight survival mode. And then you have Cillian Murphy, who's kind of like that humanity there. So slowly through the film, you see the side switch. Like Naomi Harris starts seeing that there is hope in this world. There is, a light at the end of this darkness and all that stuff. And then Cillian Murphy, he goes in survival mode, to the point of the third act. But Cillian Murphy is he's the MVP of the film. Obviously, when you watch an actor in a film and you're just like, I don't know who this guy is, but when you see the performance, you're like, Oh, they got it. This is the guy that got it. And then obviously to this day, he just won a freaking Oscar last year. So Cillian Murphy, he's the man. Brendan Gleeson, awesome. But yeah, and I think finally to wrap this up, because I could talk about this all day, was the third act is genius. I think it's, these, rapist, monstrous soldiers and all that stuff. And it's so beautifully crafted together. It's intense. It's perfection. The third act is absolutely perfection. And then this guy that was talking about that he was going to rape the girls and all that stuff, that Cillian Murphy ends up doing this crazy sticking his fingers in his eyes, and it's brutal, and just the movie's chaotic, and it's just absolutely a nightmare brought to life by Danny Boyle. But I gotta shut up because I'll talk about this all day. Like I said, this movie had such an impactful thing on me to the point where I even wrote a short script to this day that I still want to get made, and this movie has such a long-lasting effect on me. I absolutely love it. But at number 6, I had the 2002 film Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I know it's hard to when you get those ones that are, like really, deep inside. It's hard to not, stop talking about them. So yeah, I get it. It's all good. Yeah, I love hearing your passion for, for movies, anyways. But I know that one's special. So that's good. I love it. Hey, great job.
All right. So what you got number 6?
For my number 6, I'm going back to Hayao Miyazaki masterpiece 2001 Spirited Away.
Ooh, nice.
And I've got the poster in the living room, and we watch it all the time. My daughter is one of her favorite animated movies, but it's about a girl named Chihiro, and her family are moving to a new town. They kind of take a wrong turn on the way there. They find this kind of tunnel. It takes them into this fantasy world where the gal that runs it, doesn't want her to leave. So she is trying to trap her there. She's transfigured her parents into pigs and put them into the pig pens. And it's a crazy start to it, but it's a very it's a beautifully shot and beautiful soundtrack, and it's another example, like I mentioned in Howl's, that you can watch it with the English cast. They cast an awesome group of folks again, for that. Not a lot of a few names that you'd recognize, like Lauren Holly, Michael Chiklis, John Ratzenberger, a very, very, very prolific voice actress named Tara Strong, who's done like Powerpuff Girls and the Teen Titans Go, stuff like that. But it's a very, very good cast. David Ogden Stiers from MASH. MASH was a big thing for me growing up. But David Ogden Stiers plays a character named Kamaji, works in the boiler room, and I actually cosplayed him for a con a few years ago. But basically, it's just about this fantasy world and how transformative it is for each of the characters. You go into it, and Chihiro, she ends up working in a bathhouse because it's all the work she can get, and so she's helping these spirits that come into this fantasy world at the bathhouse, and she gets in trouble, and she has all sorts of adventures, and she meets a guy named Haku that come to find out he was a spirit that she met a long time ago as a small child. And so it's about obviously her getting out of this world and getting back to the real world, but she also wants to help the ones that are there, including Haku. And she meets No Face there in the bathhouse, which everyone's familiar with No Face and what he does. But she wouldn't take his gold when offered, and like everyone else there, when they took it, they ended up being consumed by him. It's another statement on greed and power, and
yep.
It's I said it. What can you say about it? It's a masterpiece for a reason, and if you feel like you don't like animation because it feels too kiddie or whatever. I mean, any of the Hayao Miyazaki movies, you definitely will, enjoy those just from the standpoint that they're so well done. He doesn't cut corners. He's he's a perfectionist, and it shows in his work. So for me, it was never any doubt for 2000s that 2001 Spirited Away was going to be on my top 10 list for sure.
Yeah, that's one of those films too that you went back to. It was like you want to talk about, we get into like some of the best cinematography. It's just like, good Lord, that movie is absolutely gorgeous. So yeah. Absolutely. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, man, I just another banger, man. Just good stuff. But all right, is that all you had?
Yep, that's it for Spirited Away.
All right, so coming in my number 5, we're getting in the top 5 now. So here we go. So coming in at number 5, I have 2007's Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. Kind of echoing what I said before with Inglourious Bastards. Once again, this is we're not just getting into like films that are just best of the decade. We're talking about the best films of all time. Like, I'm starting to get into those kind of films. And once again, echoing what I said about Quentin Tarantino with Inglourious Bastards, same thing with There Will Be Blood. One of the greatest screenplays I've ever seen. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's flawlessly done by Paul Thomas Anderson. Loosely based off of Oil. The book was called Oil, but it was H.W. It more followed H.W.'s point of view in the book, but he went ahead and did it through Daniel Plainview's entire view into the movie and stuff like that. Robert Elswit did the cinematography, and the thing about Elswit he does in this film, and once again, a combination of Daniel Day-Lewis's acting, you have Paul Thomas Anderson's directing, and then the cinematography and stuff like that, is they really do these awesome and just really, you're talking about one of the greatest actors of all time, it's these long wide shots and then also these long takes, and they really sit on the scenes. And I think that's something that's lacking today, is it's just cut like that. Now granted, we just got done talking about Edgar Wright, which is cut like that, but that's a different kind of tone. But what I mean by that is they don't let their actors flex, if that makes sense. And Daniel Day-Lewis, it's just incredible. Like I said, I love about that. One of the underrated gems of the film is absolutely Jonathan Greenwood's score, which is he's a guitarist of Radiohead. Is that it?
Is he?
Is it Radiohead? I think it's Radiohead or something like that. But Johnny Greenwood, he did the score to this film, and it's phenomenal. And it's really weird because you're talking about a man that's an oil empire and stuff like that, but the score is done in like a scary horror film, and I absolutely love it. I'm like, it's very genius. And then Daniel Plainview, and the score kicks in and stuff like that. It's kind of like that monstrous charge. Anytime he's like in the zone of getting this oil land and all that stuff, it's got this like horrifying music in the background, like a monster charging at you, like all that stuff. But the music score is absolutely phenomenal. And basically, they compare Daniel Plainview. The best way to describe him, Paul Thomas Anderson, I believe Paul Thomas Anderson said this, but basically, Daniel Plainview is a vampire, and he's Dracula, and oil is blood. And, all that stuff, that's his obsession, that's his hunt, and all that stuff. So it's horrifying, it's genius, and it's the most genius way you could explain Daniel Plainview. So, but before I get to Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the best standouts of the film, obviously, is Paul Dano. Paul Dano gives a masterclass performance. And the thing about it is, a little bit of history behind this role for Paul Dano is Paul Dano was only supposed to play Paul Sunday. That's it. He was just a big fan of Paul Thomas Anderson. He's worked with Daniel Day-Lewis before. He was just a big fan. He was like, I just want a role. I don't care how big, small it is, all that stuff. So all he was supposed to be was Paul Sunday at the beginning. He comes up, he's like, hey, my family, our Sunday family, has this land. Here, give me some money. I'll see you later. That was it. Well, come to find out, I don't know what the actor's name is off the top of my head, but the original actor that played Paul Sunday or Eli Sunday, he dropped out after 2 weeks of filming. So there was like a confrontation or something like that with him and Paul Thomas Anderson. And so now Paul Thomas Anderson, not only as a director, had to face the challenge of you just lost and you got 2 weeks wasted away that you just shot all this stuff. So he went up to Paul Dano. He was like, "Can you play Eli Sunday?" So they went ahead and made them identical twins. So it was Paul Sunday, and then you had Eli Sunday. So they made him identical twins, and then Paul. The credit to Paul Dano. Paul Dano had 2 days to get prepared for this role. So he went from one scene to, oh crap, just all that stuff within 2 days. And that really shows the talent of Paul Dano as an actor in general to take on something heavy like this. And absolutely kills it. Like I said, till this day, I think it's a crime that he didn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actor because he is phenomenal in this film. There's a scene where I call it the out demon scene, is where he's in this church and trying to get, the physical demon spirit out of this lady. And he's like, "Out demon!" And he's like screaming and stuff like that. Just absolutely phenomenal work. And then, of course, the power dynamics between Daniel Plainview and Eli Sunday in this film is obviously the battle that you see through this entire thing. And when he gets the advantage over Daniel Day-Lewis because he needs to get the pipeline built, but this guy won't let him use his property unless he gets baptized. So Paul Dano has the advantage, and he starts just getting Daniel Plainview to admit that he abandoned his son and starts slapping him, and literally physically Daniel Day-Lewis was like, "Slap me." He's like, "In this scene, you really slap me," and stuff like that. So when you see him slapping him, that's all 100% real and all that stuff. So it's an incredible, crazy scene. But yeah, Paul Dano, man, he's absolutely phenomenal. I think this is Paul Dano's best performance. I think he's absolutely phenomenal in this film. But I had to talk about Paul Dano because the mountain that he had to overcome learning these lines and stuff in this character, and you have to mold it in 2 days. It's phenomenal work. Paul Thomas Anderson, I think this is masterclass directing by him. Dylan Tichenor, hopefully I said that right, edited the film. I think it's perfectly edited. This movie almost clocks in at 3 hours long, but there's not 1 second that's wasted on this screen. And like I said, it just flies by. It's flawless editing. And then finally, hopefully I'm gonna bullet through this, but the greatest acting performance I've ever seen of all time done by Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview. It is absolutely one of the best performances. Now, I'll get to another performance that it depends on which day you ask me, but I do think by a hair that Daniel Plainview gives one of the best acting performances of all time. The different things that he had to tackle of anger, love, betrayal in this, obsession, a psychopath, and then also greed. And he is just literally physically, every time I watch it, I'm absolutely physically terrified of him. Like he's so terrifying in this movie. He's an evil con man monster. Like I said, the comparison that he's a vampire, he's Dracula, and oil is blood. And then of course, you have, he gives a speech about, I want to make enough money to where I can just go somewhere and be away from people. He's just like, he's like, people aren't worth liking. And then, of course, I got to a little bit before the scene with him and Paul Dano. You see when Paul Dano, Eli Sunday, is digging at Daniel, and he was like, tell me I abandoned my boy. And then he just starts screaming it, and it leaks out, and then you see that he actually does have love for HW and all that stuff, and it leaks out. It's a phenomenal scene. And then, of course, the beach, when he realizes the guy that's trying to pretend like he's his brother, and then realization that this is not his brother, this is somebody pretending to be his brother, and he just feels betrayed and all that stuff, and just, it's a phenomenal scene. And then finally, everybody talks about it. It's one of the greatest scenes of all time, is I Drink Your Milkshake. He completely, like I said, it's Eli Sunday versus Daniel Plainview through this entire film. And when he has the moment to absolutely take everything from Eli Sunday, it mentally, physically, life, it's such a well-written scene, acted phenomenally, magnificently. It's phenomenal, and it's crazy. And then of course the best ending of all time, I think, in a film. I still think this is the best ending of all time, is when he kills Eli Sunday, and then the butler comes in. He's like, Mr. Plainview, and he was like, I'm finished, and everything. And a lot of people see that as like he's just telling the butler, I'm finished, all that stuff. I'm finished with my meal, or I'm finished with, all that stuff, take it away. But I think that was just the cherry on top of perfection to the story of Daniel Plainview. He was finished, all that stuff. He achieved everything. He wanted to destroy Eli Sunday. He ended up casting away his own son and stuff like that. It's as a person, his soul, everything else, and everything he's done. He's done everything. He's like, I'm finished, and then it cuts to the credits. It's one of the best endings of all time. Absolutely phenomenal. And it's not one of those films that just not only, like I said before, it's not only one of the greatest films of all time of the 2000s. It's one of the greatest films of all time in general, and then also a film that changed. As a movie-loving person, it was one of the films that changed my life, so it had to be on my top 10. But, all right, sorry, stretched that out way too long. But coming in at number 5, I had the 2007 film Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood.
Very good, very well said. And I have it on my list, my honorable mentions list. It's not in my top 10, I said, because mainly mine lean a different direction, but it is in there. It just wasn't far enough down on my list to read it off, but I agree. It's a phenomenal movie. Definitely one of the best. Yeah, not just of the decade, but period. Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, you can't say enough good things about him. I mean, he just, he embodies any characters he is, and I think it's easy to argue is probably one of the top. Probably 3 male actors, anyways, of our lifetime. So, he picks and chooses his work. We know that. I know he recently is shooting a movie, I guess, with his son, and it's been 10, 15 years. I can't remember how long it said it'd been since he did his last movie, but he had retired, and now he came back just for this. I'm assuming it's probably a one-off, but he doesn't need to work, and his body of work that he's done up to this point, it speaks for itself. He's, definitely one of the greatest. And Paul as well, Paul Dano, his role in that is very understated. I mean, I think he definitely doesn't get enough credit for, how awesome of a performance that was. And, but yeah, that great, awesome pick. Awesome pick.
Yeah, the one thing too, the one thing too that I was gonna say was like I said, we're doing top 10s and stuff like that. The one thing I do want to bring to the YouTube channel, and just in general, I'd love to do podcast episodes of like breakdowns of movies. And we've talked about, we won't say what it is right now, but we're talking about doing a movie together and like a breakdown. So I really want to bring that to the channel, because There Will Be Blood is one of those things I could write essays on that film. And it'll actually, just in general, my top 5, it's just like I could write essays about these films, and I'd love to do breakdowns and stuff of that. But
great.
Daniel Day-Lewis, man, not only I think he's the greatest actor of all time, it's just like I really think he is, just by performance alone, he elevates movies. Because don't get me wrong, I like Gangs of New York, but I think it is one of the weakest scripts of Martin Scorsese's. But that movie goes to another level because of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance as the Butcher. It's just, it's incredible. It's just, he's one of those actors that's very special that can elevate a film just by his performance. So, and I think the only other one I can really say that does that as well, and actress-wise, I think is Cate Blanchett. Like it could be an okay film, a meh with the script and story like that, but just her performance alone can elevate something so phenomenally. So.
I'd agree with that. I love Kate, obviously, with her roles in Lord of the Rings series, but phenomenal. Well, on my number 5, we've already talked about it. It says 2004's Shaun of the Dead, so we don't need to drum any more of that up, other than to say that it obviously means a lot to both of us. And if you're in my living room, I've got Shaun of the Dead stuff everywhere, and just the trilogy in general. I love it. I think beat the horse enough there. But it's can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, that's another one. I'm definitely doing a cosplay because I want to go to Comic-Con as Sean or whatever. Have the wiffle ball. What is it? The crochet bat and all that stuff. It just that's such a good thing. But one of the things I wanted to say about Shaun of the Dead was I anytime I do something successful or something like that, and I high five somebody, I'm like, "How's that for a slice of fried gold?" Yeah, boy. And I'm like, I always like that movie. It's so quotable, and I just it cracks me up.
Well, that's one thing about all of Edgar Wright's stuff, and I know Simon. He wrote, he had a hand in writing a lot of that stuff. It's just, man, he definitely knows how to get into the lexicon. He knows what's going to work and does a good job of writing to that. And you go into one of their movies, you're coming out, you're gonna have some new stuff to say because they know what they're doing.
Yeah. And then that's not in the 2000s, but yeah, it's like The World's End. I quote that movie all the time, especially the where they talk about the Alexander Dumas. He's like a lot of people are saying about the Bible these days. He's like, what, it was written by Alexander Dumas? He's like, don't be daft, Steve. It was written by Jesus.
That's right.
That's good stuff. But all right, cool. All right, so going to continue in the top 5. Coming in at number 4, I have the 2004 movie, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. So, Spider-Man 2 is on my list because to this day, I still think this is the greatest, not only the greatest sequel, because I always hear about sequels, like the greatest sequels of all time. I don't understand why Spider-Man 2 is not thrown in that conversation. Like, I understand the Aliens, Godfather 2, Terminator and all that stuff, but Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest, it needs to be in that conversation, one of the greatest sequels of all time. But, the greatest sequel of all time, and my personal favorite, this is still to this day, we're in 2024 right now, still my favorite comic book movie ever made. I absolutely love this film. Bill Pope, who does the cinematography. You have Danny Elfman, who does the score, and of course the direction, the style of Sam Raimi, of course, it's the most perfect, and it's all infused together, and I can't explain of how they make the comic book pages come to life, and it's the tone, the overall tone, the music, everything, it just infuses together so much that it just beautifully elevates the comic book pages to the screen. So it feels like a comic book world, and it's visually in live action, so it's phenomenally done. I think that Sam Raimi did it perfectly in the first film as well, and then this one is just elevated to another level as well, and it's phenomenal work. You have Tobey Maguire back as Spider-Man, which he was almost not back as Spider-Man because there was stuff behind the scenes and, said he hurt his arm or something like that, but he actually, supposedly, it's never been confirmed that he wanted more money, and then they talked about bringing in Jake Gyllenhaal to play the role, and then Tobey was like, I'll do it, all that stuff, so, he's back as Spider-Man, but with all that out of the way, the Peter Parker character, we follow him in the everyday, personal struggles of anybody in New York, and anybody as a human being, has to pay his rent. He's balancing jobs between that and being Spider-Man, all that stuff. It's like, so you would think you're Spider-Man, dude. That's awesome. All that stuff. It's all thumbs up and, your perfect life and stuff like that. No, you still have to tackle and juggle these things of real life human stuff. Now, granted, I think that Spider-Man should be paid. So, saving the day, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he's the superhero vigilante. So, who knows. But anyways, but I love that struggle and what Sam brings to that, and Tobey Maguire does a very good job with that. Especially in the opening scene when he was with the pizza guy, and he was like, "You have 30 minutes. You're freaking fired, man." And he was like, and still to this day, I quote it all the time. He's like, "Go!" and all that stuff. So just like, it's good stuff. And then of course, crap, I'm drawing a blank of what the guy's name is, but his landlord, he's like, "I have ears like a rodent," and he's like, rent and all that stuff. So it's good stuff. And then it's not my MVP character of the thing, but I have to always give an extra shout out because we talk about roles that we can never see, or that are perfectly casted, and I can never see anybody else in that role because they perfectly casted it so well. It was J.K. Simmons as Jonah Jameson. That is like one of the great the greatest castings of all time, and still to this day, I could be in the worst mood ever. I have a bad day or something like that. Anytime I watch the scene where Peter comes in, he's like, "Could you pay me in advance?" And he just goes, and he just starts cracking up. It gets me. It gets me every time. That's like, and I can't help but laugh every time he does it. Dude, J.K. Simmons is just absolute gold as Jonah Jameson. It's so good. And then of course my MVP, the greatest, one of the greatest castings too as well, is Alfred Molina, who was cast as Dr. Octavius. It's so perfect. I think he's perfect as Dr. Octavius, and he's so pure and good and intelligent, and you can tell in the conversations and the dialogue, and it's written so well, is this guy wants to use his intelligence for the better of humanity, and just, he uses the crap, why am I drawing a blank? He ends up making an actual sun, but for clean energy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand, all that stuff. So it makes clean energy, and the guy's pure at heart, seeing his wife and stuff like that. I love the chemistry with that. So at the end of the day, a lot of people call him the villain of the movie, but I really, at the end of the day, I don't think he's a villain. I think with the human tragedy of the loss of his wife and his lifelong dedicated work and stuff like that, I really don't see him as a villain. I see him as a tragic hero and not a monster and stuff like that. And even at the end of the film, he even has a quote. He's like, "I will not die a monster," and he sacrifices himself to save the city and stuff like that. So all the way to the end, Dr. Octavius, it captures that stuff of why Peter looks up to this guy, and he's so purely good and stuff like that. But once again, I don't think he's a villain. I just think he's a tragic hero. That's what it is. And then I love. I remember I was in a theater. I forget what I was going to see, but they showed the first trailer for Spider-Man 2. And it's the scene in the the cafe or whatever. And that car comes flying through the building, and you're just like, oh crap. It's like, and you don't know who the villain is yet. And then all of a sudden they get up, and the ground starts to rumble like a T-Rex is coming. And you're just like, boom, 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 like that. And then you see the leg come into the frame, and you see the other leg, and I'm like, holy crap, is this Dr. Octavius? And then it actually is. So the design of the legs, I absolutely loved it, and how it infuses into the back of his spine, and he has the inhibitor chip. They, basically the legs can't control him and all that stuff, because it is a type of artificial intelligence, all that stuff. So the visual effects is so good. Obviously, in the action scenes, you're going to have the visual effects of CGI and stuff like that, but they actually built practical legs. So anytime you see like him standing there or something like nothing that requires fast movements and stuff, the arms that are moving in the background, that's all practical. And I love that, what Raimi and them did with that. So, and obviously a lot of wire work. So when he's like walking, it's not charging or something like that, because like I said, CGI comes into play with that. But when he's like just steadily walking and stuff like that, it's all wire work with the legs, and it's beautifully done still to this day. Some of the main scenes that I absolutely adore and love. The first, I got two of them. The first one is Doc Ock is born, is what I like to call it. It's the hospital scene. It really is the horror roots of Sam Raimi is on full display, and just awesome, pulling people into darkness. At one point the guy ends up using a chainsaw, a little Evil Dead reference and stuff like that. But these legs come to life and just, messing up all these doctors and stuff like that. It's truly horrifying. And then at the very end, it's like a Frankenstein's monster shot of you see the legs and the shadow and all that stuff. It's phenomenal work. But and then my final, still to this day, this was made in 2004, and I still take this day, because we're in the comic book movie era, is I still think to the greatest battle fight scene of all time is the train scene between Dr. Octavius and Spider-Man. It's phenomenal work. And then also, it really is a big credit and flexes the pure heroic soul of Spider-Man, because as he's fighting Dr. Octavius, he's like saving citizens and all that stuff, and he ends up stopping the train and all that stuff. He just like ends up throwing people into and then shooting out webs to catch him and stuff like that. It's just at the same time of battling one of your greatest villains, he's still being Spider-Man at the end of the day, and it's so purely good. Right. But anyways, I gotta shut up about this. The reason why the Spider-Man 2 is on my list, because it was so special to me. I went and seen this movie for the when I was 13 years old in the theater. It was life-changing for me. I just couldn't believe it. Just watching Spider-Man swing through the cities and stuff like that was so jaw-dropping to me. And then to see Dr. Octavius be brought to life, it was just incredible. It's such a special film to me, so I had to be in my top 10 because it affected me so much, and I absolutely love this film. Once again, like I said, my personally, I think it's the greatest comic book film still to this day ever made. So at number 4, I had the 2004 film Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
That's good. Yep, that's a good pick. I've got it on my long list, but yeah, I love the everything that you said, from his design for the Spidey suit to the practical way that they brought in Doc Ock. I mean, even me, I was older then, of course. I'm a little bit older than you are, but it just felt like you were never going to see some of this stuff on screen. It just it wasn't superhero movies and stuff at the time. Just were a little flat, and then this came out and kind of changed the game a little bit on how they can put this stuff on screen. And nowadays, of course, with CGI as dominant as it is and as good as it is, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the effects and stuff we're seeing, like we just saw in Deadpool and Wolverine, and a lot of the stuff that's happened over the last 10 years, phenomenal stuff. But at that time, I mean, you're lucky to get anything comic book related that just wasn't, oh well, let's slap something together because the rights are running out, and if we don't make a movie, then we're in trouble.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And so to see something as good as that on screen, and Toby was awesome as Spider-Man. I'm so glad that his arm got better and he was able to come back and shoot the movie. But it's just good that we can look back on these with the same fondness that we had then as we do now, because it really holds up well. Very well. I mean, and getting to see Alfred and the new Spider-Man, as that Doc Ock, and how, once again, to your point about him being, more of a hero than a villain, is, just watched his latest movie, and it started out a little bit rocky when he was fighting Peter on that overpass, but in the end, he helped wrangle everyone up. He took care of the Green Goblin and Willem Dafoe's role there, and it's good stuff. I love your explanation for it. Yeah, still a killer movie even today.
Yeah,
20 odd years later.
Yeah, I still think we're in the comic book era, but it's for younger people too as well. It's like it's just common now. But when I was 13 at that time, it was like, I think a lot of credit needed to go to the X-Men films. I think the Sam Raimi, what he did with the Spider-Man films, and what Wesley Snipes in the Blade films. If those movies weren't success, I don't think we're looking at the MCU. So I think they were like the birth of it, because I think it showed it didn't have to be the guy in superhero tights that was just, pow, punch, blah, blah, blah. It's like, especially like X-Men, the opening scene where you're dealing with the Holocaust camp. It's like, you can make a different type of comic book film, and you can put these human stories into it. Same thing with Spider-Man. You have your everyday guy battling the rent and all that stuff, but he's also juggling to be a superhero. It's like, you can bring these human elements into these films, and I think it was just a game changer for it. So
can and should, definitely. I mean, the whole idea of these like more supernatural superheroes, like with even like Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, you can't relate to that because these people are on different planets, they're different colors, they're doing different things. You got a green person, a blue person, and folks with antennas and all that stuff. But I'm still a bigger fan of the more grounded superhero version. Even go as far as saying like Captain America, because he started off as a regular person, and then through scientific experimentation, ends up being Cap. But the idea of bringing these more grounded, more human characters, and I mean young. I mean we know Toby. Not sure how old he was at the time, but obviously he's supposed to be a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid doing this stuff, and then you see it in the train scene that you mentioned when he doesn't have his mask on and everyone's hovered around him, and they're just like he's just a kid.
Yep.
I can't believe this.
Yeah, it's
So,
like dude was like, he's not older than my son, and all that
yeah.
stuff. So it just like it was such a cool moment because
That one always that still gets me. It's just the idea that everyone just took it for granted that this was just an adult out here doing stuff because they could, and instead of the idea that it was a kid that took it upon himself to do it because it needed to be done. And even though he could end up just like this, he could end up dead, on this train, but he had the responsibility to do it, and he did it, no matter what. So
you could say he had great power and great responsibility came along with it. Sorry, I had to do it.
You can definitely say that over and over again.
But all right, so what you got at number 4?
My number 4 is the 2002 American Psycho.
Oh, nice.
Mary Herron directed and wrote this thing, and Mary, she went on to do a lot of TV work. It looks like more like she wrote and directed for Oz, The L Word, Big Love, 6 Feet Under. This is the only movie I know that she did that's at least familiar to me when I look at her IMDb. But American Psycho follows Christian Bale's Patrick Bateman character, who throughout this movie kind of circles into madness a little bit, where he is a Wall Street hotshot with secretary played by Chloe Sevigny that obsesses over everything else. I mean, we see a great montage of him, working out and doing the skincare routine and just, being a bro, being a yuppie of the 2000s on Wall Street, where he's worried about his appearance. He's worried so much about what everyone thinks about him. He's worried about what restaurant he eats at and what people see him eating at the restaurant there. It's also got Reese Witherspoon and Justin Theroux, and Willem Dafoe is in it, a guy that is trying to chasten him around because there have been some issues. Jared Leto plays a character named Paul Allen that Patrick Bateman becomes obsessed with because he's got the better girl, he's got the better apartment, he's gets into the better restaurants. So he is obsessed with this guy. Then you find out, pretty early on that Patrick is leaning definitely more on the dark side, where he brings in prostitutes and eventually his friends into his apartment and proceeds to kill them in often brutal and hilarious ways while playing great 90s rock music to them. But he has a closet with all these killing implements in it, and they're chrome plated staple guns and hatchets and different things. And so he throughout this movie he kills and then is trying to avoid being caught for killing, but it eventually it takes its toll on him, and he finds himself at one point hilariously calling his attorney and leaving a voicemail where he's confessing to all these murders that he committed, and he's killed Paul Allen and all this stuff. And the next day he meets with his lawyer, and he tells him how hilarious his message was, and he's like, "Hey, you idiot, I killed these people, I killed this guy." And he's like, "You couldn't have killed Paul Allen, I just had dinner with him."
Yeah.
So that's when you realize that Patrick may just be cracking a little bit, and may have not or may have actually killed some people or not. I mean, it's such a well acted movie. I mean, Christian, he does such an awesome job in it. His unhinged murderous rampages, where he's literally like basically buck naked running after people down the hallway with the chainsaw and stuff like that. It just it's so good. I can visualize it now, him at the top of the stairs dropping his chainsaw on this person, who's trying to run away from him, and he nails him, and he just has this triumphant look on his face of like, yeah, I knew I could do it. He got him. And it's good. I mean, it's probably, if I'm looking at my list, it's the only thing that on there would be considered anything close to like horror, I mean, because Shaun of the Dead to me, it's a comedy first before it's a horror movie. But
Yeah.
American Psycho is just, it is up there. I mean, it is one of the best movies of the 2000s without a doubt. And it's early enough in the 2000s that you still get a lot of that the 90s sensibility in the design and the soundtrack and stuff like that. But yeah, it's top notch. And Christian, in this case, he appears in American Psycho, and then he's also Howl's Moving Castle, also on my list, my top 10. So yeah, he did some work in the 2000s, without a doubt.
Yeah, yeah. His what was it the Huey Lewis in the News or whatever?
Yeah.
But when it's so iconic because we're doing an audio podcast, but I have Patrick Bateman figure or whatever, and he's got the the raincoat and all that stuff. It's one of the most iconic scenes, and I can't. I always do the thing like if I hear anybody named Paul, I'm like, hey Paul, so it's just too funny.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many iconic scenes in that, and I find myself spouting off about it all the time. It's never a situation where you can't use some line from American Psycho. Just the way it is.
What was it? The scene where he's talking about the freaking business cards. It still cracks me up. Yeah.
If you're hearing this and you haven't seen it, obviously watch it. But if you can find on YouTube just the scene with the business cards, that'll tell you all you need to know about the 2000s Wall Street era, yuppies, and in particular, Patrick Bateman's character's obsession with worrying that everyone else is slightly better than him, if that's possible.
Yeah, or if I have to get out of a situation, I always jokingly say I got to go return some videotapes.
That's it. Right. Yeah, on the IMDb, that was one of the that was the number one thing on there as far as like quotables. Yeah, I got to return some videotapes.
Yeah, well, it's like
what's a videotape?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it's like you said too. It's like it was so. That juggling, because what is a sociopath is somebody that thinks like that but they never act on it, and then a psychopath is somebody that does act on it. So you go back and forth, like American Psycho, is Patrick Bateman is a sociopath and fantasizing about doing all this stuff. It just like it's a crazy good film. So.
But he also, he has opportunity when he gets his secretary Chloe.
Yep.
Up in Chloe Savani plays. I can't remember what her name is in the show, but up to his apartment, he could kill her.
Yeah.
He's thinking about it. He's got his tools there. He's about ready to do it. Then he's just like, nah. So it definitely leaves it open to interpretation whether you believe that he actually, is a psychopath or just a sociopath where, he wants everyone to like him and he wants what he wants, but has he cross that line? You go to an apartment that he had rented and was killed people in, and you find out that there's no evidence of it, and it's freshly painted. So it's like, did they come to this place and find this, and they cleaned it and repainted so they can sell this apartment because it is New York City after all, and you can't just let apartments sit there empty. You got to get it rented. But it's like, did it really happen? So it's definitely a psychological thriller kind of thing where. You're not exactly sure, even in the end, you're not exactly sure what the heck happened, and I love that about it. Yeah, I know Luca is doing a remake of it. Well, not really a remake because, it's kind of like the same thing they said with The Crow. It wasn't a remake, it was a reimagining or something like that, the novel. Right.
But I know Luca's doing I was like, no, don't do this. And then I heard Luca was involved, and I was like, man, he's a phenomenal filmmaker, and I'm just like, I'm split on how I feel about them remaking this because I think it's and hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully Luca just blows me away with it, and hopefully he gets somebody to play Patrick Bateman and stuff like that. But I think it's a product of his time. Now, granted, Patrick Bateman is a white, rich, jerk and all that stuff, and like basically the advantage that he has as a white person and the society and stuff like that. That is at its core, and it can be relatable to today as well. If you can definitely modernize that, and I hope they do it. But like I said, I'm still split on the remake and stuff like that. But man, the original one, Christian Bale, man, that's a special film. So
yeah, absolutely.
But all right, is that all you got?
That is it.
All right, so coming in at number 3, once again, will not be a shocker to anyone, especially between me and you. The coming at number 3, I have the 2007 film Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz. So, Hot Fuzz is obviously one of the other installments into the Cornetto trilogy. Like I said, a phenomenal film. I think the perfect comedy film ever made. It's just perfect. Simon Pegg, I got to it a little bit before with Shaun of the Dead. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, greatest duo of all time in cinema. I think so. And then one of the, not only my favorite Simon Pegg performance, because, man, I go back and forth of just the performance alone. The character, I still think, is the best invention ever in cinema. But performance-wise, because Simon Pegg as Nicholas Angel is just incredible. It's insane. But also, dude, Simon Pegg in The World's End, he is so good in that as well. But anyways, it's just two different sides of a coin of characters. But we're on Nicholas Angel for Hot Fuzz, and he's just so good at it. And the character is hilarious, but also badass, and then also too awesome. It's like to the point where they're like, dude, you're just making everybody look bad. Like, you're just too awesome. And, you know, I found out like 4 years ago, I think we talked about it too. I didn't know that his girlfriend in the film, it was actually Cate Blanchett, was under the mask.
Yep.
And he was like, she talks about you can't turn it off. You're always on the job. You're just obsessed with it. And he's like, you know that window's been broken from the inside, right? And I just like, it just like, he's so funny in this film. And like I said, he can't turn it off and all that stuff. He's just a perfect... He's the Terminator of cops, you know, all that stuff. So it's like,
that's right.
It cracks me up. And then the montage of all his training from SWAT, and then it still cracks me up when he does the cyclist, and then he like hits the brakes real quick and goes sideways and looks at the camera. I just like, it's so good. Like I said, the end. I'm already getting to it too. It's the comedy is incredible. It's sharp. It's, you know, edited together perfectly. It's literally a perfect comedy film, a perfect film overall as well. But when he gets to this town and stuff like that, it's just like there's a lot of weird people and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a Guess Who type thing, like who's doing these murders and things like that. And they come to find out one of the greatest twists is actually the whole town. It's like a cult or whatever. And then
right.
Crap, why am I drawing a blank? I just rewatched it. It was For the Greater Good. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
For the greater good. Yeah. Just
greater good.
But it was just such an awesome twist. Shockingly, and it's phenomenally done, even though it's like in a comedy format, but the horror effects are brutal. Like, they're so good. Like, the shears getting stabbed in the neck and stuff like that. It's like all squirting everywhere. And then what was it? The freaking statue or whatever breaks off, and then that stone goes to that head. Yeah,
fell on his head.
Yeah, it looked like
that is
freaking
one of my favorite effects in movies, without a doubt. I wanted to cosplay that.
Yeah, it's look like freaking like Pyramid Head or something like that. So
that's right.
It was nuts. But no, the film is flawlessly edited. It's once again going back to that Edgar Wright one of a kind style and stuff like that. It's just perfect. Another film I said had that Sam Raimi effect is like, I can't believe you can make films like this. It's like, you know, it's incredible. It's flawless. It's beautiful. It's like, I love it. And then, you know, of course, it's not obvious throughout the film and everything. It's a love letter to the buddy cop films of the 80s and the 90s and all that stuff. And you love that thing. Even they come back, he's like, you ain't seen Bad Boys 2 or or Point Break or something like that. So they're sitting there watching that. It's so good. And some of my favorite scenes is of course, we talk about quoting and all that stuff. Every once in a while, like if Jessica's like, what do you want for dinner? And she's like, do you want blah, blah, blah? And I go, yarp, and all that stuff. So I always quote this film all the time. And then, of course, towards the middle of the film, they talk about these people are being murdered, and they're thinking it's just like terrible accidents and stuff like that, just brushing it off. And he's like, they've been murdered. And he was like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, she's been murdered, and then been murdered. And she's like, what about blah, blah, blah? He's like, oh, no, she wasn't actually murdered. He's like, really? He was like, no, she was effing murdered. So it's so good. And then finally, it's the scene, too, that just still makes me, going back to J.K. Simmons and his little advance scene, it still makes me crack up to this day when he goes in that bar and all those underage kids are in there. He was like, when's your birthday? So and he was like, 22nd of February. And he was like, what year? And he was like, every year.
I like when he asks the one kid, what's your birthday? He goes, get out.
He's like, it's good stuff. And then it's not like a quote scene, but it's more of just a scene. I once again cannot stop laughing because it's just genius and just comedy wise. Is Patty Constantine when he gets all mad with Simon Pegg and they walk out of frame and he just comes right back into the frame for one more second and then comes right back. Like, who thinks of this? And it's just Edgar Wright. It's just like it's so brilliant. But yeah, like I said, Edgar Wright, like I said before, he has that Sam Raimi effect. It's like I was mind blown and didn't know that movies could be made like this. It was such an inspirational film to me, and one of the films that this is definitely like I think I watched this film like I'm gonna say at least 5 times a year. I love this film so much. So, but yeah, coming in at number 3, I had the incredible masterpiece by Edgar Wright, the 2007 Hot Fuzz.
That's awesome. Of course, I have it on my list. No doubt about it. I actually have it as my number 1 movie.
Oh, yeah.
Not just on my list, but it is my favorite movie of all time. Yeah. Period. I've seen it more than any other movie I have or have access to. It is just brilliant in every way, shape, or form. I mean, yeah, everything about it. My favorite intros to a character is Nicholas's intro in this movie because it starts off with the shot down the hallway.
Yep.
You just see that little dude in the distance, and you hear clop, 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 and it's just waiting.
Yep.
You're just sitting there waiting for him to come, and then he pops up in the thing and pulls out his badge and shows it to you, Nicholas Angel. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then one thing that's fun to note is, there's, we find out that the town is, murdering psychopaths, but you don't see the first murder until about 40 minutes into the show, and it's very similar to like what they do in World's End. We don't realize that there are blanks there,
yeah.
Blanks with blue blood. But in Hot Fuzz, when you see that first murder of the Shakespearean actors, and you're just like, oh, okay, something different's happening now, and then it goes off, as Nick Frost would say, in that it's about to go off, and it goes off, and then all heck breaks loose after that, which is awesome. And then it just becomes this, you said buddy comedy of the 80s, and it's, 80s, 90s is true. I mean, they even, they're watching them for inspiration, as a matter of fact. And I always love the callbacks in any Edgar Wright when they're laying the foundation at the beginning of the movie, and they're talking about, have you ever fired your gun up in the air and went R, and you ever, jumped in the air, walked with guns, that kind of stuff. And they did the same thing with Shaun of the Dead when they're doing his wonder at the front. We get to see that again, but with zombie infusion into it. But in Hot Fuzz, it's just, that takes that to the next level. And oh yeah, it's a great British cast. You see very, very famous folks, and just in roles that just crack you up, and you just think like, they read the script and they're like, yeah, I'll do that. And it just, it makes me smile every time I see it, and thinking about, British actors in particular. You see them a lot of stuff together because it's a small group of folks there, it seems like. But, man, they got to be having so much fun, and just, hey, let's just go all out on this crazy thing and just, do it. Yeah, it's great. It is, like I said, I'll officially announce it as my number 1 when we get to it, but it is my favorite movie of all time, and it just has a lot of meaning to me, just at the time it came out, and and mutual love for it. It just that's why it's my top 1. But anyways,
yeah, oh my god! When we get to your number 1, we talk about it again. There's a couple scenes that just crack me up. And of course, too, I forgot to mention too the great Olivia Colman too. She's like a perverted female police officer or whatever. So it just cracks me up.
Yeah, she's something else than that. She's been around the station a few times.
It's so funny. But all right. So what you got going at number 3?
My number 3 is a odd one, but it is a 2004 Stephen Chow directed Kung Fu Hustle.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah,
it is insane in so many ways, and it is so funny. It's one of those ones that you've mentioned where you see it, it's like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing here. It's like, this person has put this thing together. It is absurd, ridiculous in so many ways, and man, every time I watch it, I just find another nuance of it. It's got a lot of, because it's about kung fu, and it's got these hidden masters that live in this town. This group of gangsters called the Axe Gang come in, and they're trying to take over. And what's ended up happening is these masters who have lived in this slums of this town, for so long, just as regular people, they all come out to fight off this gang of hundreds of these axe wielding people that have come to kill all these folks because some perceived disrespect happened, and then so they're just like, well, they can't have that, so they go there to kill these people, or at least injure them, harm them, whatever. And so these masters come out. It's very Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the way that they did so much wire work in it, but just visually, it's so stunning. Like, some of the shots are just, you just can't even believe what's happening. But it is a comedy. It has a lot of fantastical stuff that happens during fight scenes, and but it's a Chinese-made movie. I watch it with subtitles on, and you got to, because it is the actor's work is very, very good. So watch it with subtitles on, and it's about a kid who doesn't know it yet, but he's got something special in him. He's got this ability in him that he doesn't know about. He keeps bragging that he's got it, but he doesn't actually know it yet. And then it hits a point in the movie where, in order to save some of the other masters that he's run into, that he has to unlock that in him, and he does. And it's just so well done. So I'm trying not to say stuff that would be kind of spoiler in it, but because I'd rather people honestly go and see it for the first time, and say, what did I just see? But hopefully with open-mindedness, because like I said, while it is crazy, and it's got some fun slow-mo stuff that happens in it, and just crazy stuff that seeing it for the first time, going into it kind of blind, I think you're going to just love what they're doing and how it's projected on screen. But in the end, it's a martial arts movie. It's a comedy. It's a blend of just, I don't know, almost anime style fight scenes and stuff that just are just fantastic. It's one that, if I'm ever just in a bad mood and I'm just thinking, like, I want to watch something, if I don't watch Hot Fuzz, I'm going to watch Kung Fu Hustle and just feel better, because you just cannot watch it and not laugh and just feel, just better about the world, period.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the lady with the shower cap, and how many freaking cigarettes she probably smoked during the making of that. Like, cracks me up.
Yeah, she can smoke a cigarette in like a second. It's so funny. They just watch it burn down. That's one of the shots that they did all the time, where, because her power, the landlord is what they called her in the credits. Her power is that she sucks in her breath, and then she can blow out and like project people and weapons and stuff like that. That's her big thing. And she's a master as well, and her husband's a master of the drunken fighting style. So he'd always look like he was drunk all the time. And then when he's actually fighting somebody, he still kind of does it. He's kind of just moving around, just like barely moving, but he's avoiding punches, and he's flinging his arms up, just out of nowhere, and he's knocking people out. I mean, it's insane. It's insanity. I mean, it's like a fever dream watching it in the best way possible. So if you haven't seen it, 2004 Kung Fu Hustle, Try to catch it because it is fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, we actually had a mutual agreement before we did our top tens because we had a feeling that this would probably pop in somewhere. But we at number 2, I have Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Instead of filling up 3 spots for Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, we kind of agreed between both of us if we do The Lord of the Rings, we're just going to say The Lord of the Rings trilogy. I know it's a cop-out, but it's my podcast, and that's what we did. So, yeah, we have the Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy that went from 2001, 2002, and 2003. Peter Jackson filmed back-to-back-to-back films, which is absolutely unheard of. One of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time. I know there's been films that have been, a trilogy has been filmed, like the foreign film. It's the version of The Departed. It's the crap, I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, I know that was like filmed back to back to back. It's like a whole trilogy, but nothing like this has ever been filmed back to back to back on this cinematic scale. Like nothing is that, and it's still crazy to this day that an achievement that Peter Jackson pulled off. And then also, I still think this is the number 1 greatest trilogy ever made. It's absolutely phenomenal. You have Howard Shore, who did the music for the entire trilogy. The reason why I wanted to bring Howard Shore's music because it's blah 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 blah, all that stuff with the wars and everything else, and it's so good. But one of the things that I thought was very extra special is your job is Peter Jackson's job, and then the music score and everything else coming together is. You have to transform yourself into this world. And I want to go to like the Harry Potter films. When you hear that score kick in by John Williams and they're walking through the hall for the first time, you see Hogwarts and stuff like that, you're just like, what am I looking at? Like, you're just like, this is incredible. It's like, it's such a special thing. And that's how I got with the Fellowship of the Ring when we go into the Shire for the first time. So you hear about it in the books and everything else, and you read this stuff on the pages, and then you just visually see it and how phenomenally perfect it's done. It's extra special. Cinematography done by Andrew Lesney. Is all 3 films are the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And they just like, I know Return of the King ended up winning for Best Cinematography, the Oscar, but I want to say The Fellowship did too, but I don't know for sure. But no, they're absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. Set pieces, costume design, it's all jaw-dropping. I just can't believe like the practical effects they used on the orcs, the creature designs. It's like literally you're pulled into this fantasy world. You're pulled into the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, and it's absolutely incredible. And I think every single second, Peter Jackson and everybody involved, you can see that everybody was with bleeding passionate heart. Everybody was honoring J.R.R. Tolkien's work and treated it with so much care, and it's like, once again, bleeding heart every single second on screen through the entire trilogy. It's absolutely phenomenal, especially the extended versions and stuff like that. It just continues with that too. It's just like, it's absolutely phenomenal. So there's a couple shout outs that I want to give to the my favorite performances through the whole trilogy, not just of the one film or something like that, is Ian McKellen as Gandalf. I think he was just so phenomenal as Gandalf, and of course, one of my favorite scenes with him is in Fellowship of the Ring. Is Ian McKellen was, of course, Gandalf, but given the honors of saying one of the best quotes of all time, one ring to rule them all, and giving the whole speech. And still, every time I watch Fellowship of the Ring and he says the speech, I still get goosebumps. So it's just phenomenal. And Ian McKellen's a legend in the industry anyways, and he just does incredible with that. And then, of course, casting perfection, I think, is Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn. It's so good. His, a guy that, they changed them up a little bit from the book, because in the book, he actually he will take the throne and stuff like that. But in this one, they switch it up that he doesn't want the throne. I don't want it. All that stuff. He's like, you're the the true king and stuff like that. And he's like, I don't want it. I don't want it. So just like you see this slow progression is usually the guys that don't want the throne are the best fit for the throne. So it's so good. And then, of course, I had to pick them out throughout the trilogy and stuff like that, because there's, we'd be here all day. Once again, this is another trilogy I want to break down and love to do like a deep dive into each individual film. But one of my favorite films is, or my favorite scenes and moments and stuff throughout the trilogy, of course, it's one of my favorite scenes because it's so heartbreaking and it almost makes me cry every time, is Boromir's death. You know, what he struggles with and what he goes through with Fellowship of the Ring, and you know, the power over the ring and the greed for the power of the ring and all that stuff. And then he kind of has this redemption arc of saving the hobbits and stuff like that at the end, and sacrifices himself. And it's so beautifully heartbreaking and all that stuff. And then, of course, in the Two Towers, you have one of the greatest battle constructed scenes of all time, is the Battle of Helm's Deep. It's so incredible. Nothing, one of a kind. Nothing, you've never seen anything like it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And then, of course, when you get to the Return of the King, the Gondor, Battle for Gondor, the war, and stuff like that. And you have the late, rest in peace to the Bernard Hill, who played King Theoden. Theoden, right? Theoden?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Theoden, King Theoden. And I still, to this day, get goosebumps to the core of my soul, and literally want to cry because I'm so amped up, is when he's like giving the death speech, and he's like, death, and everybody's like, death, and like everybody would you just get so amped up. It's one of the greatest scenes ever. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is not only, you know, words of praise of being one of a kind, because it's so special, and what Peter Jackson achieved is absolutely phenomenal. The entire trilogy together was nominated for 30 Academy Awards and won 17 of them. And then Return of the King was nominated for 11 Academy Awards and swept at the 76th Academy Awards, 11 straight Academy Awards. It ties the record with Ben-Hur. And then, of course, one of the biggest achievements is not only Best Picture for Return of the King, because that's, you know, the big, you know, achievement, but also that I love the Academy gave Peter Jackson the directing award and stuff like that, because he absolutely deserves it. What an achievement. I think, honestly, I thought he should have won Best Director for all three films, but they ended up giving it to him in Return of the King, and I was so happy to see that. The Lord of the Rings are special films. I think they're timeless and a jewel to cinema, and obviously the theatrical version is what I've seen in theaters and stuff like that, and blew my mind. And then they have the extended versions, which once again blew my mind and all that stuff, and I didn't think that was possible. But I absolutely love these films, and I can't think of the 2000s without thinking of Lord of the Rings, the greatest trilogy of all time done by Peter Jackson. So yep, that's what I had at number 2, was the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
That's also what I had at number 2, Lord of the Rings trilogy. Yep. So yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. I mean, yeah, obviously it is, from a cinematic standpoint, storytelling standpoint. I know the cast of character standpoint is definitely would be considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest trilogy of all time. I mean, even with the extended cut, because they have those available through, you know, Max now, and then of course you and I got a chance to see the first two anyways in theaters when they re-released them, but and they go fast. I mean, you watch them and you're just absorbed into it. I mean, there's a lot of movies that, you know, approaching 3 hours, 3.5 hours, where you just, you know, like, you know, there's some fluff, let's get it over with, and this has just never been that. I mean, they are amazing. You know, and I've got, you know, Viggo and Elijah as some of my favorite actors for the decade, and mainly for those roles. They're so good. And then, no, Sean asked him, you know, we can't, you know, skip out on Samwise, and I mean, but then where do you stop? You know, do you start?
Yeah.
Do you hit everybody else, because they're also good, and yeah, obviously, you know, Gandalf was so central to the story, and he had such an awesome role there, and yeah, just what more can you say? I mean, they are the best, and that's why I've got them on my number 2, just under Hot Fuzz. But man, I hope, other than with what we're seeing now through Prime, with them trying to do some extra, you know, storytelling off of the story, that we don't get somebody trying to remake them, you know, 10 years from now or whatever. I mean, I feel like they're an untouchable thing. It'd be like trying to remake Citizen Kane or The Godfather or whatever. Just I don't think Lord of the Rings can ever be improved upon.
Yeah.
And this was 2001, so it's been 23 years since that came out. And you look at some of the visuals and just from sets and sound and Weta Workshop, they did the weapons and armor and stuff like that. It's just I don't know how you could do it any better. I'd be hard pressed to say that it ever could be improved on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things too is like like you said too is like where do you stop when you start praising the whole cast too? I was like one of the extra shout outs too I thought was Andy Serkis as Gollum. I think he did a phenomenal job.
Groundbreaking.
And I honestly don't know how Peter Jackson didn't die in the making of this, because like you hear of all the, especially in the cinematic scale, of how they were getting up at 4 a.m. and this guy did this for almost close to 2 years, because they even told the actors too. It's just like, a scale in this movie, I would think each film would probably take 3 to 4 months to complete filming, something like that. So you're talking about over a year they probably spent on just production alone, let alone pre-production and post-production and all that stuff. So he had to at least 3 years of spending on these films, and how he pulled it off. And it's like I said, I don't think we'll ever see it done again, because on this level.
No, just looking at my list, because I listed out 2001, 2002, 2003 for each movie. I keep looking at it like that just not seem possible.
Yeah.
But because now you look at any sequel that comes out for something. I mean, I don't want to bash on Avatar, but good gravy. It take them 5 years to make the next Avatar movie, and they already have everything in the can. They have all the digital assets. They have everything they need, but it'll still take them 5 years to make it. And then you look at Lord of the Rings, it's like, man, how did you do it? Yeah. You talk about Peter. I remember watching a making of thing of the first Iron Man, and Jon Favreau directed that. And you see Jon Favreau come in like the first table read, and he's probably like I want to say like 245, 250. He's a pretty big guy. He sits down and they're doing the table read, and then throughout the entire making of the Iron Man thing, because it took them 6 months or whatever to do it, but from concept to finale though, he was there when they were designing the armor. They were doing everything, but he just withers away over the course of 6 months of filming. So much so that when he's in the movie, because he's in a couple points, as Happy, that he looks so dramatically different. Because he's lost like 50 pounds during the filming of this stuff, because he's getting up at 2 a.m. and being there for looking at dailies and looking at sketches and different things to try to get the production team, make sure they've got stuff to work with for the next day and all that stuff. And it's just, man, and to do it for years
times 3
years straight.
That's crazy.
It's crazy to think about. So and that's why I've got Peter as one of the best directors of all time in there. So
well, and also too, like right after he got done with this, he went right into the King Kong. Because he did like the King Kong and stuff like that. Just like the work ethic and stuff like that. I'm like, it was just insane what he's achieved and all that stuff. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's awesome, fantastic.
But cool. That was both our number 2s. So
yep, both number 2s.
All right, we're still going into number 1. All right, coming in at number 1. Once again, this ain't gonna be a surprise to anyone, and me and you, I talk about this film with you all the time and all that stuff. But coming in at number 1 is the 2007 film, Ethan and Joel Coen's, the Coen brothers, No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men, man, just I'm gonna try to not linger on this too long, because that's another movie I could write essays on. I could freaking talk for hours about this film just alone and everything. But let's start from the top here. We got Josh Brolin, as Llewellyn Moss. The greatest talent of Josh Brolin in this film is there's literally like little to no dialogue at the beginning of this film. Now, granted, we see the cop that gets choked out by Harvey R. Bardem and stuff like that. Well, I got him under control, sir. Yep, everything's fine here. And then he hangs up the phone. And then he gets freaking choked to death. So, but Josh Brolin, like the whole opening scenes, I think there's a limit to no dialogue, and Josh Brolin, he's the underrated gem of an actor that, his way of his body language and like speaks no dialogue, and most of the stuff is through his facial reactions. And when he's like, he gets shot later in the film and he's like bleeding out and he expresses so much pain, and just like, it's all body language, the facial expressions, stuff like that. And that's why Josh Brolin's the man. So all that stuff. Sheriff Bell is definitely the main character. I know a lot of people talk about Llewellyn Moss as the main character. I think Tommy Lee Jones, and especially in the book, Tommy Lee Jones, Sheriff Bell, is definitely the main character of the film. It's such an incredible thing done, and I guess I should have said this at the beginning. This is based off the same name, No Country for Old Men. It's based off the novel by Cormac McCarthy. Phenomenal book. I read it. I waited to read the book because I seen this film, and I always had it in my mind, is did Anton Chigurh, did he kill Llewellyn? Not Llewellyn, did he kill Carla Jean? There we go. Did he kill Carla Jean at the end of the film and stuff like that? But somebody said, well, they tell you in the book, and I was like, I avoided the book for 17 years. So I was just like, I don't want to know, because I'm trying to figure out, like, did he shoot her? Did he not shoot her? And then kind of find out, somebody pointed out a detail that Anton Chigurh, when he walks out of the house at the very end, I should have noticed this. I watched the film in double digits, and I never noticed that he checks the bottom of his shoes. And why would he have to do that if he didn't shoot her? All that stuff. So I was like that. So I finally read the book like 4 years ago, once I figured that out. And in the book, it's pretty clear. He just says, and he points the gun and shoots her. He literally tells you in the book. So, but anyways, in the book by Cormac McCarthy, Sheriff Bell is definitely the main character. It's such an incredible concept that any generation or any old person could relate to. Is he's a sheriff that thinks he's out of his depth. He doesn't understand the world anymore. At the beginning, he gives the quote about the guy that murdered somebody, and he was like, he says, I don't know why I did it. He's just like, I did it. And he's like, I just always wanted to do it. And he was like, I'll see you in hell. I'll be there in about 15 minutes and all that stuff. And he's like, he thinks he just doesn't understand the world. And then, of course, when Anton Chigurh comes along, he thinks he's out of his depth. He thinks the world's beyond him. And he's past his time. He's too old for this. There's no country for old men, and he thinks that the world's passed him on and stuff like that. But in reality, there's always going to be evil in the world, and just because a lot of people, like even go into today, I have a lot of people that just because they're older doesn't make them wiser. And the thing about it is, and at the very end, even his uncle or his best friend or the old man that tells him, he's like, what you got ain't nothing new. And he's like, everybody goes through that. They think the world's beyond them. They don't understand it. But Sheriff Bell is this beacon, generational beacon of light against the darkness of the world and stuff like that. That's why a lot of people, they say the ending of this film is very lackluster, but I think it's beautifully written in the dialogue. Talking about he had the dream of his father, carrying this torch out in all that dark. And he was like, because his father carried the torch when he was a sheriff of, trying to be this light in the darkness of this world and all the evil and things like that. And that was passed on to Sheriff Bell. And he was like, he just doesn't think he's worthy of what his father did before that, but he actually is. He is the rare light against the darkness of the world. And I just love that. It's such a beautiful ending and stuff like that. And Tommy Lee Jones, I think this is one of my favorite performances from him and stuff like that. He's so gentle and charismatic, and then especially with the guy was like, when they go up to the door and it's blown out, and he was like, are we going in? He was like, guns out and up. And he was like, what about you? And he was like, I'm right behind you. He just like, he's such a smart aleck and stuff like that, especially the relationship with his wife. She's like, be careful. And he's like, always am, and all that stuff. So it's just another day. It's just another day in the park for him and stuff like that. And he's awesome. And then, of course, the Coen brothers, Joel and Ethan Coen. I think this is one of the most faithful and greatest book adaptations ever made. If you read the book and you watch the movie, it is like tit for tat, almost everything. And then they do change stuff, obviously, for an adaptation, but it's literally just 100% faithful to the book, and I love it. It's masterful filmmaking, and it also shows that the Coen brothers, they're not just of one genre. They're one of the greatest filmmakers of all time because they can do every genre. And to hear that they did the No Country for Old Men, coming off the Big Lebowski, Fargo, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, all that stuff, and then make one of the greatest films ever made. And then the crazy design of the haircut that they gave to Anton Chigurh, it was so genius, but also they wanted to separate that humanity from Anton Chigurh to make him seem like he's like an alien from another planet is what they wanted to go with. So they go with this crazy haircut, which Harvey R. Bardem was like, I hated the haircut because he's like, I'm not getting laid for 3 months with this, because he had to go to bars and stuff, and they're hanging with this crazy haircut, so it just cracks me up. And I really feel like the once again, we talked about, The Lord of the Rings honoring J.R. Tolkien's work, and it's exactly what the Coen brothers do too. They honor it with so much bleeding, dedicated heart, and they really understood Cormac McCarthy's material and really explained and adapted it in every detail on the screen. It's actually masterfully done. Cinematography done by their great Roger Deakins. This is some of my favorite cinematography. Roger Deakins. And then of course there is music score in this movie, but there's little to no music at all in this film. It's absolutely genius. And then instead of having a music score for your villain or something like that, Anton Chigurh, every time he comes on screen you can hear the sound of like a train track or trains in the background, because he is on a path, an unstoppable path, one direction, an unstoppable killing machine, that he's on one path and he's like a train. He just like, there's no avoiding it. You're on that one path. So there's all that in the details. So finally, we're going to get to the thing. I talked about Daniel Day-Lewis. Once again, it depends on which day you ask me. I go back and forth. Daniel Day-Lewis, as Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood, is the greatest performance of all time. And then I have Anton Chigurh Harvey R. Bardem as Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. I go back and forth at which day you ask me and stuff like that, but it's the greatest performance of all time ever put on screen. It's absolutely awesome. It's like the single greatest performance of all time. It's so good. The best way to explain what Anton Chigurh is, a lot of people said he's like death incarnated, which in some aspects I would agree with that, like kind of like a Grim Reaper, but I think he's more of a messenger for death itself, and basically gives you the chance, and basically like fate has brought you to him, and he gives you the chance, at the face of death and all that stuff with the coin flip and stuff like that. I love how Harvey R. Bardem approached the character, and he also in the book as well, but it's a book, you're based off words and stuff like that, but he has this, he doesn't scream, he doesn't get angry, he doesn't do anything emotional wise, and he's just calm, and it's so unsettling because how calm he is in every single situation. Even when he gets shot and he's in the hotel doing the medical stuff on himself, it's like the guy he's an alien. It's like he's unhuman. He's like a Terminator, whatever you want to call him. It's just like he's just completely just separated. It's like one of the greatest evils of all time. Multiple scenes. Once again, a big thing to Anton Chigurh and Harvey R. Bardem's performance. Every time he comes on screen, you're just glued. You're absolutely locked in on him, like, holy crap, here we go. And the coin toss scene in the shop is one of the most unnerving, intense things. I talked about the opening scene in Inglourious Basterds, of the tension building and the writing and the acting and all that stuff. But the coin toss scene in the store with Harvey R. Bardem is one of the greatest crafted scenes of all time. It's absolutely unsettling and just intense, and I'm literally my knuckles would get white watching it. I'm like, oh my god, here we go, and all that stuff. The self-medicated, which I got that as well, it shows how adapted that Anton Chigurh is and everything. Like, he literally self-medicates himself, stays off the radar, blah blah blah. Absolutely good to do when you see this man hunt down the door scene. So basically, I wanted to talk about two scenes that I just crafted beautifully. I got to the coin toss scene. It's so good. I love the hunt down scene when it shows how adept of a assassin or a psychopath or whatever you want to call it, and just how deadly an unstoppable killing machine that Anton Chigurh is he comes into he buys a hotel room, and he comes in, and he kicks the door open to see where the light switch is in the room, because he knows he's about to go to this next room, so he wants to see the layout of the room. Yeah. And he goes up and he feels the thickness of the walls. He's like, I could probably shoot through that. He goes, and when he kicks the door open, is it going to fly back? Where's the light switch? Where could somebody hide in the room and stuff like that? He's just an adaptable killing machine, and it's just phenomenal to see it. And then when he finally gets everything done, the most genius thing is he takes his shoes off and goes and walks to the next room so they don't hear him coming, and he kicks this door open, just absolutely just demolishes everybody in this room. And then of course he gets to the guy with the shower curtain, because he doesn't like blood to get on him. And Carla Jean, that's obviously the big giveaway. And when he blows Woody Harrelson away and the blood trail hits his shoes, so this guy doesn't like blood getting on him, so he pulls the shower curtain and then blows the shotgun, and you see the blood hit the shower curtain and stuff like that. It's so phenomenally done. But there was that, and then also later in the film, when Llewellyn Moss is on the run from him, he tells the guy at the front desk that any swinging dick comes in here, make sure you tell me, come call me and stuff like that. Well, he calls down to the front desk and it doesn't happen, and then he turns out the light, and then you see the foot shadows under the door, and then you see the light kick off, and he's like, what the crap? And then you see the door hinge hit him. It's one of the best shootouts of all time, and it's such an intense scene. Like I said, there was multiple times throughout the film my knuckles were white. I was absolutely glued to the TV. But this was the Oscar-winning Best Picture winner in 2008, and rightfully so. Harvey Bardem won the best performance by a supporting actor, and one of the greatest Oscar wins of all time. It was so funny because in the same year, Daniel Day-Lewis won for There Will Be Blood, and Harvey Bardem won for No Country for Old Men for supporting actor, and that's probably two of the greatest single acting performances you will ever see in your life, and it's so crazy. Anton Chigurh's view for human life is just chilling and unsettling, and like I said, I can't enough word to praise. Like in the film, when he's getting ready to kill Carla Jean, she says, she's like, you don't have to do this, and he's like, they say the same thing, and she's like, what do they say? And he's like, you don't have to do this. So it just shows that separation. He doesn't have any thought as a human being. He just sees human beings, and then of course the cattle gun that he carries around with him and executing with people is, he doesn't even see them as humans. He sees them as animals. They're livestock. They're not even, they're not even human. So the turn off of how just unhuman he is, and of course an incredible funny study they did in 2013 was a psychiatric study of 400 films, and Anton Chigurh was number one as the most accurate portrayal of a psychopath ever put to screen. So just like that just shows you what the book. But once again, I got to wrap this up. A film and a book. Every time I revisit, I discover something new. And a book, I think everybody should read. And of course, a film. If you've not seen No Country for Old Men, a film you need to see, because I think for any cinephile or movie nerd or anything like that, you have to see No Country for Old Men. The 4-time Oscar winner for Best Picture, Harvey Bardem for Best Supporting Actor, Best Directors for the Coen Brothers, and the Best Adapted Screenplay, rightfully so. A film that doesn't pander to fit like a certain group or does it like that. The Coen Brothers and Cormac McCarthy, when they made the book, that's the story. There it is, and they present it to you. They don't try to fit some kind of demographic or some kind of pander to anybody else. They make the film, the artistic view of them. It's expressed on the screen. It's masterfully done. One of the greatest, flawless perfections. And like I said, the Coen Brothers execute a cinematic masterpiece. So at number one for the top 10 2000s, I have the Coen Brothers, No Country for Old Men. So.
All right, very good. That was awesome. I love Javier's portrayal of Anton in that as well. It's just, man, it's super unnerving, and it's very terrifying of the idea of this, I said Terminator-esque like person who's single-minded of purpose, and that's just it. I mean, and then in the end, you end up with this guy that. He's going to be there to kill you, and then you add in the coin toss part of it as I don't know, as almost a way to amplify the terror part of it. It's like, this guy's there to kill you, but he's going to go ahead and, toss this coin and get like you have an option, because, it just is so well done. It's a great, great movie. And you talked about cinematography, and it's always nice to think of cinematography in movies that aren't just all action and flash and all that stuff. It's the subtle art of cinematography, which is so nice that, and Edgar Wright, I think, he does that a lot, and just how he frames things on screen. And, he has action too, but in the case of, No Country for Old Men, it just visually, you may not even realize that what you're seeing and why it's fantastic, but looking back at it, you say, like, wow, what an interesting idea of how they shot that, or why they shot it this way. When you see the sum of all the parts, and then you're like, it's well deserved, for something that seems simple on the surface. Then you take a better look at it, you're like, that's genius. It's really well done.
Yeah. Well,
good stuff.
We were talking about like quotes and stuff like that. Of course, call it, call it. And the guy's like, I don't know what I stand to win. He was like, everything. He was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, you stand to win everything. Call it. And it's just like, it's so terrifying. Then, of course, when Woody Harrelson's sitting there talking to him, he was like, do you have any idea how crazy you are? And he was like, are you talking about the nature of this conversation? He was like, I'm talking about the nature of you. And it's just like, man, it's like, it's so good. But yeah, man, it's just, it's such an incredible film. And, we want to talk about the stuff that just permanently implanted in my brain forever. And it's just one of those films that do that. And, one of the greatest films. It's top 4 for me, because I would say Evil Dead 2 is my favorite film of all time. You got No Country for Old Men, Seven Samurai, and The Terminator. I just think they're just the one that, I call that the core 4 of films that have just impacted my life so much, and just a phenomenal film. So yeah, another one. Like I said, I'll sit there and talk about No Country for Old Men all day. It's all that stuff. But yeah, I know we got details and stuff like that. But yep, go ahead and give us your number 1, man.
Yep, number 1 for me, we discussed, is going to be 2007's Edgar Wright directed Hot Fuzz, written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, and it's just, I don't know what more else to say about it. I think you had another note, but for me, it is just a perfect feel-good anytime movie. I've got it on my tablet. I watch it when I travel. I've got it in every form available, so I can watch it anytime, day or night. It's just mine. If I hesitate more than 5 minutes on trying to figure out something to watch, and if I'm the only one here, it's going to be Hot Fuzz. I'm going to pop it on when I'm doing work, when I'm just lounging around the house, just reading a book or something. I'll put Hot Fuzz on in the background just to have it go, because it is just so well done in every way. And I love even just hearing it in the background. It just makes me feel good. So that's a number 1 movie right there for you. So
yeah. Well, the bullet points on that, on the Hot Fuzz, the things I was talking about, it's more quotes, and then also just more genius, perfect, funny scenes. Is in every single Cornello trilogy movie, Edgar Wright deals with the fence. And Shaun of the Dead, where he goes to jump over the fence and all that stuff. And then, and this one, Nick Frost, Simon Pegg is like a freaking out of the Matrix. Like, he's just like a superhero jumping over everything. And then Nick Frost just falls through it. And then, of course, The World's End, he's all drunk. And then Gary King just goes flying through the freaking fence and all that stuff. So that was such a funny scene. And then one of the hilarious quotes is, I can't get it out without laughing, is when he was like, you ever been stabbed? And he was like, yeah, I've been stabbed. And he was like, how would you describe it? He's like, probably the most painful experience of my life. And he's like, what was the second most?
And you know what the second one was.
Yeah.
This conversation we're having right now.
It's so funny. And then finally, once again, Paddy Constantine, man, he's so funny in this freaking movie, is when he's in the bar and they get done drinking or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, you got a mustache," and he's like, "I know." Just like, it's good stuff.
He's so good. I love the scene where he takes the kind of the marble mouthed PC with him so they can go visit the guy out in the country, and he thinks it's for the dog because he's also the canine officer, and he's like, "It's not the dog we need." And they get out there, and there's a guy from several movies, several shows, including Game of Thrones, where he was Walter Frey, and he's in Harry Potter, but anyways, and he just is mumbling through his words, and that's when they find their giant cache of weapons, and that's what ends up going into the evidence room that he ends up using at the end of the movie for all his weapons to defeat the town. So I love the it's just a hedge is a hedge. What's Moner griping about? And it's so good. I love it. It's the most quotable movie that I watch over and over again, and I'm sure at least the folks here, they get sick of me talking about it.
Yeah, it was like
you can't go a day without it.
Yeah, I love when they find the weapons too, and he's like, "Oh, there's nothing but a bunch of junk," and he hits it, and it's like, so many good
it's
scenes.
Not alive. It's not active. It looks active, and then I love Edgar Wright's montage for the weapons, just because he uses the same few shots a few times, so it just keeps calling back the same image of this one image of these weapons, just because it's just funny.
Yep.
It's one of those things where it's a rule of three, comedy threes, where you just keep going back to the well, and it's like boom, 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 you hit this, and it goes back to this other image, boom, 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 does it again, and it's just it's just brilliant movie making in general, and I can't. I could go on and on about it. I could start from the beginning and do the whole movie, but that's my number one. 2007 Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, when he does those like the suit up with the weapons and stuff like that, it's like it brings a cinematic tear to my eye, because it reminds me of Sam Raimi in Evil Dead 2 when he's like all suiting up and he does the chainsaw and blah blah blah. It's just those zoom in still shots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I love that stuff. But
all
right, so there we go. That's what we had. So I can go first or whatever, but what I like to do at the end of the top 10, and we'll get into the bonus questions here, but I'll do mine first or whatever and let you get prepared. I just want to go through our top 10 again here at the end. At number 10, I had the 2008 film Thomas Alfredson's Let the Right One In. At number 9, I had the 2006 film Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. At number 8, I had the 2004 film Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. At number 7, I had the 2009 film Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. At number 6, I had the 2002 film Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. At number 5, I had Paul Thomas Anderson's 2007 film There Will Be Blood. At number 4, I had the 2004 film Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. At number 3, I had the 2007 film Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz. At number 2, I had the 2001, 2, and 3 Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy, which was Fellowship, The Two Towers, and Return of the King. And then at number 1, I had the 2007 film Ethan and Joe Coen, the Coen Brothers, No Country for Old Men. And that's my top 10 for the top 10 2000s films.
It's great. A good list. My top 10, starting number 10 was 2000's Best in Show by Christopher Guest. Number 9 is 2003, Jon Favreau directed Elf. Number 8, 2006, Mike Judge directed Idiocracy. Number 7, the Hayao Miyazaki masterpiece 2004, Howl's Moving Castle. Followed by number 6, another Hayao Miyazaki 2001's Spirited Away. Number 5 is 2004 Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. Number 4, Mary Harron's 2002 American Psycho. Number 3, the Stephen Chow directed 2004 Kung Fu Hustle. See it if you haven't. Number 2, the trilogy 2001, 2002, 2003 Lord of the Rings by the great Peter Jackson. And then my all-time favorite, 2007, Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz, Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright, masterpiece.
All right, cool. All right, guys, and then like I said, before we get into the bonus questions and stuff like that, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the top 10 and stuff like that. I love doing these lists. It's so fun. And then, of course, I want to, before we continue on to the bonus questions, definitely let us know down in the comments and stuff. Let us know your top 10 films of the 2000s. Like I said, it was such a great decade of films and stuff like that, and I love films in general. And just like I said, I really had to take a step back and look at the 2000s. I was like, holy crap! It's such a good decade. I still have the 80s is my number one. Then you got number two is probably the 90s. But man, the 2000s compared to the 2010s as well, because I think there's a lot of phenomenal films in the 2010s as well. But yeah, man, what a great decade of films and stuff like that. But once again, let us know your top 10. Like I said, it's quality wise, it doesn't matter. Just let us know your personal top 10 films down in the comments below. But all right, so let's get into the bonus questions. Like I said, this is something new for the first time I'm doing on this, but it was something I wanted to do on the other decades things, but I always forgot for some reason. So but I'm glad I remembered this time. So this one of the fun little questions is I gave to me, myself and Chad. Was the top 3 directors of the decade. And do you want me to go first, or you want me to take it away?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. So at number 3, I have like a 3-way tie. I know we already talked about this. We were just like, it's so hard to pick just 3. It is. I should have cranked it up to 5, but I didn't. But anyways, at number 3, I got like a 3-way tie of the Coen brothers, because I think Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and then of course I think one of the greatest films of all time put to screen with No Country for Old Men, I just talked about. I had Edgar Wright for Shaun of the Dead, and then also Hot Fuzz. I just think he, once again, I've said it multiple times throughout this podcast, he had that Sam Raimi effect. I didn't know that films could be made like this. It was so inspirational and just groundbreaking to me, and just like, yeah, I can't say enough how inspirational those films are to me. And then in Edgar Wright in general as well. And then at number 2, I had for the best directors of the decade, I had Quentin Tarantino, who did Inglourious Bastards. He did Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, and he also did Death Proof, which I think Death Proof is a lot of fun. But yeah, I think he was just on another level in that decade, and I think I forgot to say my number 3, my third director that was the 3-way tie was Martin Scorsese. He did Aviator, Gangs of New York, and he also did The Departed, which he ended up winning Best Director. A long, well-deserved Best Director nod for The Departed and stuff like that, and I love The Departed and stuff like that, but Martin Scorsese definitely. But number 2 was Quentin Tarantino. I just think he was on another level in the 2000s. Once again, I think his masterpiece with Inglourious Bastards. Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, those are two. They were almost in the top 10. That's how good those films are. And I know Harvey Weinstein ended up making them split it into 2 films, and I still view it as one film and stuff like that. It's phenomenal and very special. And then Death Proof is just a lot of fun and was part of the double feature Grindhouse films with Robert Rodriguez or whatever. So it was such a fun film. And then at number 1, we've already talked about it. All the praise of that decade is Peter Jackson for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He was my number 1 director of that decade, because what he achieved, we already talked about in detail of praise. It just, unlike anything you've ever seen, and I don't think you'll ever see an achievement like that ever done again on that scale. I think somebody could do it like a low budget trilogy, like all that stuff, but I don't think on that cinematic level, I don't think set pieces and production design, costume design, like every single thing that he had was challenged with. How he did that 3 times, I have no idea. So it's incredible. But yeah, number 1 best director of that decade was definitely Peter Jackson for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So, and he did King Kong as well, but that Lord of the Rings trilogy is just goat status stuff. So yeah. All right, on to you.
All right, I'm going to do a 2-way tie for my number 3. I've got Quentin Tarantino for the same thing. I got Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, Inglourious Bastards, Death Proof on mine. There's no denying that of the decade, those were killers, and Quentin has a style of his own, and he he did a great job as awesome decade for him. And then tied with him, I put Edgar Wright, LaShawn, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim later on, World's End later on. Of course, we know him with Baby Driver, Last Night in Soho now. So those are my number three, a two-way tie there. Then my second, I'm going to go with Hayao Miyazaki because he did some amazing things in the decade. And when you think of animation and how long that stuff takes, I mean, each of those movies for him were years in the making. You know, Howls and Spirited Away. He did. I'm just going from the decade. He did Ponyo in there as well. But we know about his other movies. You know, with Grave of the Fireflies and that said the Cat Bus and but other things. But anyways, fantastic filmmaker. And he is from start to finish because he'll do like the original, like all the drawings for the characters, and he'll do all the like kind of the cinematics. I mean, he can basically, like a flip book, will go through like all of the storyboarding for the entire movie and draw it himself before he even hands it off to the other people. And it's, for as far as animation goes, that's a pretty amazing feat. And then my number one is also Peter Jackson for Lord of the Rings trilogy and everything else he's done. But in that time period, we will never in our lifetime ever see anything like it. Yeah. I think just the idea of back-to-back movies, I can't see it happening. I mean, actors, actresses, they end up with so many other projects and things happening that you just can't tie someone up for that amount of time anymore, not without, what do you pay them per movie? Yeah. $30 million a movie? I mean, good gravy. But anyway, so Peter Jackson pulled off one of the greatest trilogies and one of the greatest 3-year periods for movie releases, 2001, 2002, 2003, that we'll ever see coming from one director. So that's why he gets the nod. He just well deserved.
Yeah. All right. So the next one we're going to go on to is our top 3 performances by an actress of the decade. All right. And then at my number 3, this was like the more of a overall of the decade. It's just not one performance. I just think Cate Blanchett, she's my favorite actress of all time, and I just think she was on, cemented herself into like GOAT status because every range, everything, like, she can do everything. And like I said, there's some films in here that I'm gonna say that I think quality wise was but her performance was absolutely phenomenal. She's like that. Her performances saved the film. I did Bandits, which is a good film and stuff like that. She was very good in. She was, of course, in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. She was in Aviator, which she ended up winning the Oscar for. Elizabeth, The Golden Age, and then The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I just think the decade, and then she had other performances as well, but it just really, Hot Fuzz, she was in there for a little bit, but she really just cemented herself as one of the greatest actresses of all time. And a 2-time Oscar winner. I thought she was going to be a 3-time Oscar winner just recently with Tar, because she's phenomenal in that film as well. But she's still to this day killing it. It's just, she's one of the greatest actresses that ever lived, and I just think she was phenomenal in that. And then at number 2, I actually had Uma Thurman for Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. I think Uma Thurman blew me away in the Kill Bills. Like I said, yeah, it's a samurai movie, and I know I'm biased because I love samurai movies and stuff, but she tackled a lot of different ranges that she had to go with, like heartbreak of like losing her daughter, to anger, to being badass, to all the emotional things. Like, she tackled a lot as an actor, like what they had to tackle with the character and stuff like that. She went through a lot, and then especially the scene where at the end when he's talking about, you took a BB from me, to Bill, and she's just like bawling her eyes out, and then heartbreaking scene when she wakes up out of the hospital, out of the coma, and she feels her stomach, and then she just starts crying because she thinks she just lost her daughter and stuff like that. And it's just like, she's just phenomenal. And of course, she's badass through the whole movie. Definitely Uma Thurman. I just thought she was phenomenal, blew me away. And then at number 1, I had Charlize Theron, or whatever you say it, is for Monster, which is phenomenal. She just absolutely threw herself into that role, completely unrecognizable. I think when I watched that and stuff like that, I was young at the time. When I watched that, it's a pretty messed up movie, but I was sitting there, I was like, it took me a couple of years later. I was like, that was Charlize Theron. It was no,
Yeah.
there's no way. I'm like, under all that makeup, and she completely just disappeared into that role, and she ended up winning the Oscar for it and stuff like that, rightfully so. But yeah, Charlize Theron was my favorite performance by an actress of that decade for sure for Monster. She's phenomenal in that movie. But that's what I had for my top 3 performances by an actress.
All right, very good. I got some extra ones in here, but I will do just a quick cap because I've got like a 4-way tie for number 3 here if I'm adding it all together. So I've got Cate Blanchett in there as well. I mean, Lord of the Rings, The Aviator, of course, or just a small appearance in Hot Fuzz, just because I love Hot Fuzz. But yeah, she is phenomenal throughout the whole decade. Yeah, her Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons, and I mean, the list goes on and on for her, definitely. And I've got a couple that I know they were in a few things throughout the decade, and it just performances that stick in my head, like Holly Hunter or Oh Brother, and then she was in Incredibles and 13, and I always like her style. She's very folksy and more like how she was in Oh Brother, how it's just just a simple role, but memorable. And then of course her voice work in Incredibles I thought was very cool, and I like animated stuff, and I thought she did a great job. And I'll go with Carla Gugino, who was in Sin City and Watchmen and Night Museum and Spy Kids, American Gangster, and she just had a huge decade. If you look back at all of Carla's work there, it's very good, and she's still, even now, like, she's in Follow House of Usher, and she's doing really well still, and I just think she's a phenomenal actress. Just one of those character actresses that I don't think get credit for their longevity and how well that they just keep on keeping on. So I would go with Carla. And then my actual number 3 was Parker Posey. I just think her work in the comedies that I love with Best in Show and A Mighty Wind. She popped up in Blade Trinity in the 2000s, and then had a funny role in there. And she was in The Sweetest Thing. I just grew up just seeing her in stuff like Dazed and Confused, and just always thought a lot about her work. And so seeing all the stuff she did in the 2000s, I wanted to put her there. And my number 2, I put Zooey Deschanel. She was in Hitchhiker's Guide, Elf, Yes Man, Bridge to Terabithia, Eulogy, Failure to Launch, 500 Days of Summer. I mean, she did a lot of independent stuff, and I think she's phenomenal. And in her quirky way, she doesn't, other than like maybe 500 Days of Summer, Failure to Launch, where she like stretched a little bit. She's more of a comedy actress, but I just always enjoyed her work. And then my number 1, just because this is a funny pick for me, was Yuan Chao, and she's the gal from Kung Fu Hustle that plays the landlord.
Yeah.
I said, just see it if you haven't. If you're listening to this, see it if you haven't, and I think you'll agree. It just and honestly, she did probably another 50 movies during the 2000s, because she's a Chinese actress that work a lot, and she does like dramatic stuff, a lot of like martial arts stuff as well. So I looked at the rundown on IMDb for her. There's probably nothing that anyone on here would even have any idea what it was. I sure didn't, but a lot of work. She does a lot of work, and I just wanted to throw her in there because she's phenomenal in Kung Fu Hustle, and so she cracks me up in that. Just so good. But that's it. That's for my actresses.
All right. So, all right, we're going to our final bonus question, and that is the top 3 performances by an actor of the 2000s decade. I have a number 3. I don't have a 2-way tie, but I do want to go like an honorable mention, I guess, if you call that. But the one performance is Viggo Mortensen from Eastern Promises. I think after the Lord of the Rings trilogy and stuff like that, they were like, he's this action fantasy kind of thing and everything, but he's one of the greatest actors on the planet, and I think he showed that in Eastern Promises right after that. And the Russian accent, just the way he is in that film, it's just like he is so damn good in that film. So definitely Viggo Mortensen in Eastern Promises. And then my other honorable mention is I think you can't go without leaving that decade without giving just the mega props to him, because and that would be Daniel Radcliffe for the Harry Potter films. Daniel Radcliffe literally at a young age put a franchise on his shoulder and ran with it. If Harry Potter does not work, this whole series does not work. And the guy literally had to grow up with these films and into that role. So he had to mature into that role and everything else. And I think Daniel Radcliffe did a phenomenal job. And just recently he won an Emmy for the Weird Al movie and stuff like that. Because Daniel Radcliffe, he's more than just Harry Potter. I think he's a phenomenal actor. And like I said, but yeah, at such a young age, to put a franchise on your shoulder and carry it the way he did, it's just phenomenal, and kudos to him. And then, but my official three, at number 3, these are going to be pretty obvious and stuff like that, because it's a lot might be boring, but sorry, these are the 3 greatest performances. But is Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. When he played the Joker. I know a lot of people gave, when it came around to the Academy time, was, they only gave him the Academy because he died. No, they gave him the Academy because he's that freaking good. It's that performance is incredible as the Joker, and the way, we want to talk about Charlize Theron, threw herself into a role. Heath Ledger threw himself into that role, because I will admit, a lot of people won't say it, but around the time of 2006-07 when they announced it, a lot of people will be like, I always knew from this day and stuff like that it was going to be great. I'm one of the guys that wasn't. When I heard that Heath Ledger got cast as a Joker, I'm like, what? And I'm just like, they casted him as the Joker? I'm like, what? And then just completely shut my mouth when I seen that guy on screen. I was like, good Lord. Absolutely threw himself in that role. And the heartbreaking passing of him after that, because he did the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus was his last film, but man, his career was going to explode. It just it was nothing but the sky for him after that, because it was a career changing performance. It's absolutely just put him on the level that he's one of the greatest actors working, and that role is absolutely phenomenal. And number 2, I've already got to it, is Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 2008. Well-deserved. One of the greatest acting performances of all time. I've already talked about in There Will Be Blood of how awesome he is. And then also, at number 1, I have is Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. So it's one of the greatest acting performances I've ever seen. And I go back and forth with 1 and 2 all the time. And then it's just extra special because within a month, There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men were playing in the theater at the same time. So you're witnessing 2 of the greatest acting performances of all time, 2 of the greatest films ever made of all time in the same year. And at the Academy, Daniel Day-Lewis won the Oscar for Best Actor, and you got Javier Bardem for Best Supporting Actor. It's absolutely phenomenal. What a special year and special films and just a special decade and all that stuff. So, yep, that's what I had for Actor Wars.
Definitely. That's awesome. A great list. One other thing for Daniel Radcliffe, he just won a Tony for a play,
that's right,
that he was in, because he started doing plays pretty much almost at the same time as when shooting maybe the 3rd Harry Potter movie. He started doing some stage work, and I've seen some of his clips and stuff of him. He is just phenomenal. He's just one of those guys that now he's just going to be around forever. Yeah. He's just going to be someone that pops up in these dramatic roles and gets these really cool chances, like he did with a Swiss Army Man, and stuff like that. He's a killer. I wish I had him on my list, but I don't. So I'll let you know what I do have on mine, and I did have a couple of extras, and I'll just read them off as extras. Then I've got Viggo Mortensen on mine for Lord of the Rings, Eastern Promises, A History of Violence, and The Road. He did those all, within the same decade there.
I was gonna say the Road. That's another Cormac McCarthy book.
Oh,
So
is
yeah,
it okay?
yep. So
Yeah, he kills in that, and I mean, yeah, he's obviously amazing, and then I'll lean, back on my love of comedy stuff, and I've got Ben Stiller on my actor list because you think about some of the things he was in, like the Royal Tenenbaums, Tropic Thunder. He did Zoolander, Dodgeball, all in the 2000s, and he just he killed it in those. And so I'm a comedy fan, so I've got a couple on my list. My number three, I have to put Elijah Wood for Lord of the Rings. He also was in Sin City and had a really cool role in there. He did voice work in the movie Nine, the stop motion animated movie. He was awesome in that, and then he was in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Did an awesome job in that. My number two is going to be Christian Bale, or American Psycho, House, of course, I mentioned. He was in The Machinist and was unrecognizable in that, and an awesome role there. I loved his work opposite Hugh and The Prestige, and he just, he played two characters in that, and it was just such a nice role for him. He's in 3:10 to Yuma, and then Equilibrium, a really cool pre-Matrix movie that came out, sci-fi thing that he was just so good in that, and just phenomenal. Obviously, Batman, Dark Knight stuff, but and my number one is going to be Simon Pegg, just because I love Simon. I've got Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead. He did Mission Impossible during that time. He was in one that I think he wrote and directed called Run Fat Boy Run, about a guy just running. And then he was in Star Trek, of course, during that decade as well. But that's it. I mean, it's, with my leanings more toward the comedy side of things and less dramatic stuff, that's what my actors reflect that. But I think those are all good 2000s actors and performances.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's all for our bonus questions, and that is it for our top 10 movies of the 2000s. Like I said, I appreciate you doing this. I had an absolute blast and stuff like that. I was really looking forward to that. And we did the 80s, did the 90s, now the 2000s. Love to do the 2010s, and then I love to go back and do the 70s too. Top 10 films of the 70s and stuff. I think that'd be extremely a lot of fun and stuff like that. But yeah, and like I said, I want to bring more to get more traffic and stuff coming on the channel and stuff like that, as like doing breakdowns of movies. We can do like director spotlight. We can do top 10 or not top 5 performances by certain actors, like in films, and all that stuff. I love to do little things like that. Or we top 10 sci-fi films, top 10. I've done top 10 horror films, which I'd love to do again, because you ever make a top 10 list and you're like, crap, I would have changed the blah 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 and all that stuff. So it happens all the time. So I'd love to revisit top 10 horror films, top 10 westerns, blah blah blah. So it'd be awesome. So but yeah, I appreciate it, and we're looking at 3 hours now. I appreciate everybody that stayed and listened to it and stuff like that. I hope you had a lot of fun, because I had extremely a lot of fun. And once again, thank you, Chad, for being on here. I had a whole lot of fun, man.
My pleasure. Even not on screen or on a recording, it's always fun just chatting movies with you. We've done that for a long time, and I would look forward to doing something else. I mean, I'd love to do maybe like a watch along for something at some point. I think that'd be cool. I mean, obviously, I would recommend Hot Fuzz just because, I know it so well. But I'd love to do anything else with you, since we're apart and don't get to hang a lot. It's nice to, at least get together and chat this way. I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
I would love to do the thing too. It's just like revisiting like each year, like do like start with 1970, like your top 10 movies from 1970, 71, 72, 79, and do each year. I think that'd be a lot of fun too as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just go back in time and revisit stuff, and and that's the reason why I do this channel too, is like we're in the streaming era, and some stuff gets lost in the abyss of like films you never even heard of, because if they don't make any like views or traffic on streaming services, they boot them out of there. And I think a lot of and it's sad. Yeah, it's exactly. It's like it's sad because there's goofy movies, all that stuff, and then they just get lost in the abyss and all that stuff. So that's why I'm a physical media collector and stuff like that, because preserve, cinema and all that stuff. So, but once again, guys, I appreciate you guys listening to this. And once again, make sure you guys comment down what your top 10 favorite films from the 2000s decade was. Make sure you come out there below. And then also, too, even the bonus questions. What were your favorite directors from that decade? What was your favorite top 3 performances by an actor of that decade? And your top 3 performances by an actress of that decade? Let us know absolutely in the comments below. And once again, I appreciate you guys listening. And another special thank you to Chad. Again, thank you so much. But once again, like I said, take care of yourself and take care of each other. See you later.